We're living for the moment now, we're one with the world. I can't lose this feeling I get. My heart's in the right place, and so is my soul, yeah. I won't take no excuses for it. Love it, need it, live it. I feel like something's missing when I do not have it. I feel it in my bones, gotta find my space. These emotions on my face, taking a toll, I gotta pay it forward. I'll give it all that I can. No matter what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take no for an answer. If it don't hurt me, it makes me stronger. Yeah. No what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take it no more. I won't. Oh, baby. Just leave it to me. I know what I need. You'll find if you see. And if you believe, you live and you breathe, you'll find the key. Lifting me, lifting you. Can't go alone, let's do by two. Doing this together, it's me by you. All through the night, all through the night. This is me, this is you. When we get together, we can all pull through. I don't ever ever wanna stop this groove. Let's get it right. Take it to the Lord, then take it to the grave. Listen to the wise man, tell me what he say. Listen to your heartbeat like it still bleed. A little bit of hope, yeah, it's what we still need. Say a little prayer for the moment. Give what you got, just go in. Can't hold you back if you own it. Live your life like you're chosen. No matter what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take no for an answer. If it don't hurt me, it makes me stronger. Yeah. No what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take it no more. I won't. Oh, baby, just leave it to me. I know what I need. You'll find if you see. And if you believe, you live and you breathe, you'll find the key. Know what I need, I know what I need. You find the key.
Chasing love in an empty bar. Pour a drink till I make it past. The midnight hour seems to come and go, but I know. Walk on up with a drink in hand, sipping mixers cause you can. And all the lights begin to switch off. You're chasing the night, holding on for life, feeling the high, chasing the night, chasing the night, chasing the night, chasing the night, holding on for holding on for life, feeding the high, chasing the night, chasing the night. Hotel rooms and city squares, champagne bottles, drum and snare. The sights and cities seem to fall away when you stay. Locked in love for a night or two, losing sleep just to get off you. Day to day you wanna stay out, you're chasing the light, holding on for life, feeling the high, chasing the light, chasing the night, chasing the night, chasing the night, holding on for life, feeling the high, chasing the night, chasing the night.
We're living for the moment now, we're one with the world. I can't lose this feeling I get. My heart's in the right place, and so is my soul, yeah. I won't take no excuses for it. Love it, need it, live it. I feel like something's missing when I do not have it. I feel it in my bones, gotta find my space. These emotions on my face, taking a toll, I gotta pay it forward. I'll give it all that I can. No matter what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take no for an answer. If it don't hurt me, it makes me stronger. Yeah, no what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take it no more. I won't, oh, baby. Just leave it to me. I know what I need. You'll find if you see. And if you believe, you live and you breathe, you'll find the key. Lifting me, lifting you. Can't go alone, let's do by two. Doing this together, it's me by you. All through the night, all through the night. This is me, this is you. When we get together, we can all pull through. I don't ever wanna stop this groove. Let's get it right. Take it to the Lord, then take it to the grave. Listen to the wise man, tell me what to say. Listen to your heartbeat like it still bleed. A little bit of hope, yes, what we still need. Say a little prayer for the moment. Give what you got, just go in. Can't hold you back if you own it. Live your life like you're chosen. No matter what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take no for an answer. If it don't hurt me, it makes me stronger. You know what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take it no more. I won't, oh, baby. Just leave it to me. I know what I need. You'll find if you see. And if you believe, you live and you breathe, you'll find the key. Know what I need, I know what I need.
Chasing love in an empty bar. Pour a drink till I make it past. The midnight hour seems to come and go, but I know. Walk on up with a drink in hand, sipping mixers cause you can. And all the lights begin to switch off. You're chasing the light, holding on for life, feeling the high. Chasing the light, chasing the night, chasing the night, chasing the night, holding on for holding on for life, feet in the high, chasing the night, chasing the night. Hotel rooms and city squares, champagne bottles, drum and snare. The sights and cities seem to fall away when you stay. Locked in love for a night or two, losing sleep just to get off you. Day to day you wanna stay out. You're chasing the light, holding on for life, feeling the high. Chasing the light, chasing the night, chasing the night, chasing the night, holding on for life, feeling the high. Chasing the night, chasing the night.
We're living for the moment now, we're one with the world. I can't lose this feeling I get. My heart's in the right place, and so is my soul, yeah. I won't take no excuses for it. Love it, need it, live it. I feel like something's missing when I do not have it. I feel it in my bones, gotta find my space. These emotions on my face, taking a toll, I gotta pay it forward. I'll give it all that I can. No matter what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take no for an answer. If it don't hurt me, it makes me stronger. Yeah, no what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take it no more. I won't be there. Just leave it to me. I know what I need. You'll find if you see. And if you believe, you live and you breathe, you'll find the key. Lifting me, lifting you. Can't go alone, let's do by two. Doing this together, it's me by you. All through the night, all through the night. This is me, this is you. When we get together, we can all pull through. I don't ever wanna stop this groove. Let's get it right. Take it to the Lord, then take it to the grave. Listen to the wise man, tell me what to say. Listen to your heartbeat like it still bleed. A little bit of hope, yeah, it's what we still need. Say a little prayer for the moment. Give what you got, just go in. Can't hold you back if you own it. Live your life like you're chosen. No matter what, I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take no for an answer. If it don't hurt me, it makes me stronger. Yeah, what I won't let up. It's in my soul, it's in my blood, and I won't take it no more. If I won't, oh, baby, just leave it to me. I know what I need. You'll find it, you see. And if you believe, you live and you breathe, you'll find the key. Know what I need, I know what I need. You find the keys, the keys.
Chasing love in an empty bar. Pour a drink till I make it past. The midnight hour seems to come and go, but I know. Walk on up with a drink in hand, sipping mixers 'cause you can. And all the lights begin to switch off. You're chasing love.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to RCI TV for round 2 of the RCI Endurance Championship. My name is Ryan Gill. I will be your broadcaster for tonight, and joining me for commentary is RCI's dynamic duo of Jesse Lee and George Smith. How are you doing tonight, Jesse?
Well, I'm doing fine. I've got George Smith over here playing me funny memes in my ear, and I've got you on the other side of me trying to get us all very, very organized. And finally, hello everybody out there at RCI TV. Round 2 of the Endurance Championship live for you tonight. We've got 2 hours of racing coming at you from Zandvoort. And George, it is lovely to be back in the box with you.
JC, Ryan, always a pleasure to share this space with you guys, and it's felt like it's been a little while since we've been able to commentate on a race, and unfortunately I wasn't able to join you guys last week, but for the duration of the rest of the series I will be alongside with you, and that makes me very happy, and I'm excited because I don't think we've really done something like this together of such a long nature, the endurance kind of racing, but still having it relatively short in terms of having an enduro. It's going to be interesting. I'm keen to see. You guys gave me a little update on what happened last week, and it sounded like the racing there, if it's going to come out here to a circuit like Zandvoort, is going to make for a very interesting 2 hours.
Yeah, it was definitely an eventful race a week ago, wasn't it, Jesse? And we had the Orion race team Mercedes of Matthias Egger and Fulvio Barazzini taking the honours in the Pro class. And of course, the first of the AM drivers was the 222 car of the 2S Endurance Team Purple. And they quite they dominated the AM class, it's fair to say, but we had a lot of enjoyable moments. There were a few scary moments as well, and I'm pretty sure that, you know, Zandvoort being a much tighter circuit than Misano, I think we're probably going to be in for a few more scares here tonight, Jesse.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, the thing that, speaking of scary moments there, Ishmael Lebret goes over the curb and nearly goes into the barrier, but you're absolutely correct. My takeaway from round one at Misano was drama alert. So many mistakes. If you are going to make a mistake, make sure you make it in week one of the championship and move on. Top quality talent, esports pros alike, having issues getting into and off of pit row, satisfying pit requirements, diving down into corners, making little mistakes, causing big problems. It was absolutely 2 hours of chaos. I was ripping up my scoring sheet at the end of that race last week. And I don't know, I suspect a little bit more of the same. George, you have anything that you're looking for in particular? I mean, we're at Zandvoort, hard to pass around here.
I think that's pretty much the nail on the head. Is I think during the practice session here, drivers being able to just dial the cars in before going into their quali sessions, and it really is about getting yourself a decent enough start so that you don't have to get involved too much on the early sort of train follow effect of what Zandvoort can do. And I guess on that same edge of the coin, you know, drivers have to remember that they have to continuously still find that way to push, even though you are caught up in, you know, a bunch of traffic. So it's going to be an interesting qualifying, I feel, for the big teams. They want to get themselves out towards the front of the grid. They always want to be fighting out there. But of course, you've got a whole mixture of different drivers here, and the grid is going to be a very interesting place to see where they stack up. It's hard to have a perfect lap at Zandvoort. It's one of those tricky and tight circuits, and very little margin for error. If you do make a mistake, it normally ends in catastrophe. So it's really going to push this entire class to the top of their abilities, and it's interesting to see where all the cars are starting to stack up after the recent BOP updates to the cars. You know, that's always what I'm interested in watching, is how they sort of fare in the longer stints in a race circumstance.
Yeah, and of course, you know, talking about the nature of this track, we do have a few more tricky circuits coming up later on in the race calendar for this championship. Of course, we're at Zandvoort for week 2. We'll be heading to Nürburgring next week, and then we will have a break week because it will be the 12 hours of Bathurst on the weekend of the 17th, Saturday. And of course, we'll be looking forward to that. I'll have George Smith joining me in the box for some of that. And I think Jesse Lee will be joining Mike Jones as well for Team 2. Well, once Bathurst is over, we'll be going to Hungaroring, Silverstone, Brands Hatch, Paul Ricard, and Zolder. So quite a challenging end to the season, George. And of course, Jesse and I had a bit of a discussion on this as practice is now coming to an end. This is a fairly difficult end to the season for these guys. Brands Hatch, Paul Ricard, and Zolder. These are some of the more challenging circuits on the calendar and within ACC in general.
Yeah, they definitely fall into that more skilled division for the ACC package that we have here, and I think it's a cool take on an endurance championship. I think it's a tough race stint, the 2 hour stint, having to share the car with 2 drivers in your team, and then on the same sort of side of that, having the fact that they're going to these tight circuits where they aren't necessarily given an easy race to begin with. So the margin for error not going to be there as we go over to quali, and just look how busy the pit exit is as these drivers all try to get themselves out on circuit, give themselves a fair chance to set a quali, and we've had an absolute catastrophic start as Team 1 gets a little bit of a pile-up coming through. So looks like some drivers getting through, 2 drivers getting caught out. But out on track, Marco Ripper, he's done exactly what he wanted to do, gets himself out with that whole shot onto the circuit. So we'll have some fresh air to be able to take in the beautiful scenery of what really isn't beautiful scenery at Zandvoort. I'm not a massive fan of the track location here. It really does prove to be a difficult circuit to drive, but I feel like the onboard views from inside here can kind of be a little bit distracting, and the drivers here really need to just focus on track. Look how many cars are out on the circuit at the moment, JC. It's chaos.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there's only about 3 or 4 cars that I can see from our vantage point now, even less as more of them come out. I believe there's only 2 cars left in pit road, only one of them not moving. I mean, this is sort of a land rush start. I'm not really used to seeing that, and I'm not sure why they would all try and occupy the same space like that. Seems a bit strange to me, especially with a track where you know it's going to be difficult to pass. Why wouldn't you just wait? I mean, got the track map up on the right side of the screen for you there, and it clearly shows you that there's a ton of unutilized track, and all the cars that came out in that pack together, well, they are still in that pack together. That is not going to be conducive to fast lap times.
So we're on board here with Marco Ripper for the first lap of the qualifying session. Of course, he was the car to get out on track first, and hoping for some clean air indeed, although he does have a car out on their outlap just ahead of him. I think that's the number 9 car just out in front, but looked pretty good through the first sector. Nice and clean, no mistakes going through any of those tricky sequences of corners, and now of course up to the top of the circuit. Got to hold yourself so committed through this section of the track. You've got to be very fast, ride the curbs as much as possible, but obviously don't go too overcommitted. And you can kind of see here that Marco Ripper is doing a very good job. And of course the 514 didn't have the best race at Misano, but of course looking for a much better time now out here at Zandvoort. And you can see on the track map on the right hand side all the cars out on a flying lap at the moment, highlighted in grey. Of course the 514 highlighted in red. It's the car that we're currently following. And Marco Ripper looking very clean here as he's going to come into the last couple of corners. He'll go through Kumbo and then into Airy. And you've got to be so committed through the acceleration point on this corner. Goes wide, not too wide though. He'll come up towards the timing line, and the first flying lap for the qualifying session, it's a 1:36.3 by Marco Ripper in the Mercedes.
Diego Lima going to set a qualifying lap as well, slots into second place temporarily with a 1:36.6. Mark Haynes also jumping onto the board. Jordan Grant Smith going to top the pole sitters for the moment with a 1:35.319. Almost immediately then also topped out by Fulvio Barazzini. He's done a 1:35.319. Sorry, it was Jordan Grant Smith at 1:36.090. Carsten going to slot in with a 1:35.9. So as we predicted, all those cars getting out early into quali, all getting some decent laps in. There was only a few of them that we saw invalidating it based on the track map. So a good early performance coming out, which is what is needed at a qualifying session at Zandvoort. We've only got 10 minutes to set a quali lap. There's very little margin for error, and if you are getting out on track and getting yourself out of position, you could catch up with cars in front of you, cars behind you, and you're trying to find that balancing point for space as we continue to follow Barazzini around. He hasn't yet been topped with his pole time of 1:35.319, but it looks like most of our drivers in the field getting some times up there. Looks like Sean Arnold in his Ferrari, the number 38, going to do a 1:35.646, so 3/10 off the pace from Barazzini. Ripper, who had his banker lap out in 10th place, about to cross the line now, 3/10 up on his previous time, will jump up to 6th place with a 1:36.060.
And here it is, one of the more interesting cars in the field, the Bullet Racing number 46 Bentley, currently driven by Al Ali right now. They were very exciting to watch last week at Misano, perhaps sometimes for the right reasons and sometimes for the wrong one, but regardless, they are out here again. They're trying to win the AM Cup. We should mention there are 2 classes here today. You probably already knew that by looking at the timing board. A white number placker is Pro, a red is AM, and they are racing for their own championship as well as sort of no overall points or anything like that, but there is a team championship, if you will. So you are in your own class here, and there's nothing that says a AM car cannot race a pro car. And one of the reasons I bring that up is because you will inevitably see that. That was a point of contention last week as well. Now Schuler's going to come across the line all the way down in 31st. Where can he get that Lamborghini? It's going to go just up to 28th. If there's one thing I could say about that leading 126 Mercedes right now is that they've been on it since this championship started from practice last week, and that continued into this week. I don't think they've been beaten in a session yet. I might have to check that, but I'm pretty sure that they have won every single session, so you could say that they are the ones with the target very much on their back. How good would it be for the number 9 Ferrari team and Ishmael Lebrecht right now to be able to say that they bested them, get that shot in the arm, and maybe take it to them today? I'm just speculating, of course, as we watch Martin Schumacher driving his Lexus around the track. He had a, I suppose we would call it a ho-hum day at Misano last week. One of the...
A what day, JC?
Ho-hum. You know, just sort of mediocre, I suppose. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Up and down, ho hum. Nothing to write home
not
about.
hum-ho.
No, not that at all, Mr. George Smith. But I think the French would call it malaise. But anyway, he's going to come across the line here.
I do like when you speak foreign in the comms box, to be honest. So you know, just you must bring that flair all the time.
There you
I learn
go.
new things.
All right, Martin Schumacher.
I'll describe my week as hum-ho. I mean ho-hum. Hum-ho?
Martin Schumacher moves his 42 Lexus up to 8th place in the qualifying standings. Jesse mentioning that had a bit of an average race at Misano last week. They still finished 3rd despite all that, so I wouldn't have called it a bad performance from them.
No,
especially.
it absolutely wasn't.
But they did have their moments. I think everyone really though had moments of panic, especially the Fordzilla Ferrari of Darren King and Sean Arnold. Of course, that car sitting 6th right now.
Tinko van der Velde's pole position time of 1:35.2. I mean, that is starting to get very, very quick out here. The track temperature 43 degrees, so it really is scorching. And it will be interesting to see how this plays into the finishing up of quali. Of course, these cars will be good enough to do their quick laps out on circuit. So really, the outlap gets the tires up to temperature and allows them to just push pretty much immediately after that, and they're then almost certainly just trying to keep on pushing to the very edge of qualifying. I mean, there's only a couple of cars that are sitting in the pits as we go down into the final minutes of the quali session. Barazini going to find pole position once again. 48 seconds on the clock for Van der Velde to try and find his pole position back. He is a 10th up on his time and is the 10th down from the leader in 2nd place, as Andrzej Dedicek in that number 44 slots into 7th place, just 7 tenths behind the leader Barazini.
Of course, Dedicek sharing that Aston Martin with none other than James Parker for this season, and they're definitely going to be one to monitor over the course of the campaign. But they did have a very good result at Misano despite their qualifying position, so if they can qualify in the top 10, which they currently are sitting 8th as Harry Conway just goes above them, I think this car has a really good chance of finishing in the top 5. But of course, as qualifying comes to an end, Andrzej Dedicek, well, that's going to be the end of his qualifying session.
Yeah, of course, the qualifying session here in this championship, incredibly short. We have endurance races, but sprint qualifying just 10 minutes to get the job done. Barazini in the 126 getting it done right now with that 35.082. Faster than Tico van der Velde right now. About a half a tenth off of him. And then, of course, another 2 tenths or so back to Lebrecht in 3rd place. Check out Arnold in 4th place. That's not bad at all. And the 222, the leading AM driver, in 9th place, inside the top 10 as an AM in that 222. Carson doing everything he can. I think that'll be a theme that continues, as we will probably have even more AM drivers, because that's the way that it usually goes up inside the top 10. At the end, everybody finishing up their final laps. We're going to see everybody piling across the line, trying to get that final bit of speed. What can Felix Rupert do in the number 16 Team Greenlight Audi? It's called Team Greenlight despite not having any green in it. He's going to go all the way to 7th place. Dramatic improvement for that team at the buzzer as the teams continue to pile across the line.
Qualifying wraps itself up. And a really good lap coming out there from Felix Rupert right at the end. I mean, he had 9/10 up on his final lap out. Manages to get himself up to starting within the top 10. And that just goes to show how some drivers really can muscle down the nerves and find that pinpoint perfect lap for themselves right at the edge of the line. And like we said at the start of the broadcast, getting up and starting towards the front of the order is absolutely a mission goal for a lot of these teams and drivers. You want to give yourself a foot in the door.
Did Van der Velde, did he get even closer to grabbing pole position on his final lap? I believe he did.
He did.
He took
135.106. So
he took an additional 200ths out of his time. He got really close to that, and we have not seen anybody that close to the 126 yet. And of course, Lebrec will start in 3rd place, and that's going to be an interesting position as well. I reckon with a good start, you can make up some positions here on the start. And that, guys, that's going to be ultimately important here because of the nature of this track. It is hard to pass. It's hard to follow even. You see a lot of people following and going offline, off-road. So the start here could be ultimately important. So based on that assessment, I'm going to assume the stewards are going to be busy after turn 1 here today.
I mean, it's it takes two to tangle, right? Or tango. I don't want to say tangle. Two to tango when it comes into a circuit like Zandvoort. You got to give ample and free room to drivers that are alongside you. Otherwise, it really can lead to some uninteresting situations. A flyby of the grid as we get to watch our running order. Barazini and Van der Velde on the front row in 1st and 2nd. Then we've got Cody Blanton and Darren King in 3rd and 4th place. 5th and 6th will go to Jaroslav Hanzik and Jordan Grant Smith. 7th place for Maximilian Woolmuth. 8th for Christian Stricker. Mikael Sandström and James Parker round up the top 10. In 11th place, Phil Witt starts. Just behind him, Morgan McCall, Stefan Zero, Marco Ripper, Martin Lawrence, Alistair Gillies, Nicholas Basselet, Andre Felix, Sevenik, Lubinar Ziemann, Sebastian Brunier, Nasser Ala Ali, Carl Mathis, Vuxen Vindevik, Michael Muthen, Thorsten Roschek, Martin Muthen, Michael Rovert, Dustin Vust, Zelko Madzo, Mike Chadwick, Gunther Schuller, Ken Washbrook, Daniel Merchant, Marco Winkler, Bruno Brito, Craig Fitzgerald, Karim A. Suri, Andy Howard, Craig Fitzgerald, Morgan McCall, and AJ Jones round up our 39 drivers lined up on the grid for the second round here for the Enduro Championship. 2 hours on the clock for our two-man teams to take to the circuit. And oh, what a lineup of drivers it is.
Did you just say we had 39 drivers? Or 39 cars?
39 cars. Sorry.
39 cars around Zandvoort for 2 hours. One other thing we have not mentioned that I will mention to you guys now, there's likely going to be some tempers here today because of the nature of the track and because it's going to be hard to pass and because it's really hot. 44 degrees C. Pretty sure that's close to the surface of the sun temperature. Partly cloudy, no rain expected early in this race. Track is going to be optimum, no wind to speak of. That's a rarity here on the beach in Zandvoort, but all things considered, it's going to be hot. I didn't see as many cars going off as I would have imagined with the hot temperatures. Maybe they have adjusted adequately for that. But tempers, driving standards, all these things, what are your guys' predictions for this race? Because I think it is going to be 10 rounds with Mike Tyson today.
Well, I tell you what, Jesse, it definitely could be that, because this circuit, you're going to have to get rough, aren't you, if you're going to get overtakes around here. And, well, I mean, I'm sure plenty of us know that from experience of actually driving the car and commentating on so many races around this circuit and many others, and it is going to be incredibly difficult. But I think, you know what, Jesse, I think it's time that we go to everyone's favorite game pre-stream, or pre-race, sorry. And I think it's time that we pick our predicted winners for tonight. Who are we going to curse tonight? And you know what? Because George wasn't here for the first round, I think it's only right that we let George Smith pick first. So George, who's going to be your pick for tonight? Who's your driver to watch?
I mean, I think the team that I'd like to keep my eye on would probably be the Chris Hayes Sim Racing team, the number 121 Porsche, currently being piloted, I believe, by Jordan Grant Smith. And his co-driver, Mawson, will be sharing the car with him. So I'm not going to stray too far away from my my Porsche favorites. I want to keep an eye out on them. And Chris Hay happens to be a personality in this community who I love. So yeah, I mean, I couldn't pick a better car than the 121 Porsche. Over to your predictions, Jesse.
Well, the number 9 Ferrari had a up and down day at Misano. Cody Blanton did everything they could possibly do, but today they are going to turn that third spot on the grid into a win today, and it might be settled off the initial start or after the first pit stop. They're going to get the clean getaway, and they're going to take home the win.
Well, Jesse Lee condemning the number 9 car to its fate.
Don't say things like
before
that.
Before the race has even started. And, you know what? I mean, last week, I broke character a bit, you know? I'll be honest, I broke character. I went for
I don't believe it.
I went for Ismail Lebrec in a Ferrari. I mean, it's so unnatural of me to choose a Ferrari for a race win. But it's my boy Ismail Lebrec.
For the viewers that cannot hear Ryan's sarcasm, he is a big Ferrari and Ismail Lebrec fanboy. So
I am really, not a big Ferrari fan.
It's not right. You told me it's your favorite Italian.
Will you go ahead and pick Jardier, please?
How did you know I was going to pick Jaroslav Honzik, Jesse Lee?
He's in a Lamborghini.
It's a badge that has a bull on it, therefore you love it. And it's Jardier.
Well, there you go. They've pretty much made my prediction for me. And Jaroslav Honzik's going to be my pick for tonight. Obviously, starting 5th, he's got Valentin Barria alongside him. And they weren't present for the first week, actually. So they've got catching up to do right from the get-go. And I think that, well, the likes of Jardier in the car, he's going to be starting, he's going to be raring to go.
Well, there you have it. 3 bold predictions based on mere instinct and without any sort of credible evidence or fact to back it up. That's exactly what you get here at RCI TV. Going to be 2 hours just past 2 p.m. IMSEN time here at Circuit Zandvoort. We love to see it, and we love to have you guys with us getting ready to pop the cork on this one. This is going to be a crazy race. Can Egger get away for a second week in a row? That might be pivotal and vital today. Can Vandervelde get alongside of him and force a mistake? But what of Lebrec? What of Arnold, Honzik, and the rest of them? We will know shortly as they are getting ready to round the final turn. 39 cars in this race, all going side by side, getting ready to tackle that hairpin that is turn number 1. The front row slows, getting ready to get the green flag. Interesting that the outside line you'll see is in the marbles here. We'll see how much that plays into it. Waiting for the green flag. Still no green flag yet as they get up to the line.
Green light. Go, go,
And
go.
the lights go on. The flag comes down, and it is an absolutely fantastic start. They will be side by side back on the field. They are still side by side. It's going to be a clean getaway for Egger. Egger's going to get clean. It's going to be a tap. There's going to be a tap. Vandervelde. It's going to be sideways. 3 wide they go. Lebrecht goes through.
Hanzik just had the absolute perfect start there for what he needed to do. It looks like the likes of Bonka going to get caught up in a lot of traffic. Just look at that view as they get themselves starting to form up into a little semblance of a train. A couple of drivers looking to still make some moves around the outside if they can. Mitja Bonka is definitely holding on to the likes of Mikael Sandström at this point and going to hold on for a little bit longer, going to be present or put pressure on there from Lawrence in that number 404 Audi behind him. So a little train of Audis in shots at the moment, all the way from 7th down to 11th place, led out by the AM driver Karsten in the 222.
Oh man, I thought Lebrecht had the whole shot there. I thought that he was going to be in the best position to maybe do something between Egger and Vandervelde. Turns out that wasn't the case. Lebrecht gets half spun in a 3 wide situation in the first turn, and they are right the way down to 6th place. Sam Arnold is up to 2nd place. He's able to get around Vandervelde in this battle here as they all just scream off down the front straightaway here. Who is feeling froggy? Who can get that shot down into turn 1? Not a lot of people willing to make the early move right now, guys.
Yeah,
Around the outside. Oh, they're going to go and touch them a little bit going through there. Rommel and I believe Stefan Zero going to skirt sides through turn 1. You can see a little bit of scuffage on the side of the Lexus as well. And that's not really what you want early on. If you are going to pick up any aero damage, it is going to be costly. And if you are going to go in and repair it, that's going to be costly too. So everybody, I believe, trying to keep themselves as clean as they can while still trying to push. It's a relatively clean start, consider all things considered. We see a couple of cars out of formation in the view of the track on the right side of the screen, switching over to, of course, Jardier here in that Lamborghini. Ryan's pick in his driver predictions and actually currently fighting it out with Grant Smith from Chris Hay Racing in that 1-2-1, and all trying to put that pressure onto Tinko van der Velde in that Mercedes, that number 66 in front of them. So a good drive coming out from the front of the pack here, all keeping it nice and close and competitive as they round the final curves before they get down the start-finish straights. And that really does feel like that was the start of what should have been a sprint race coming down. And now everybody just going to start to settle into their order and try and make their way through. Zandvoort, really not an easy circuit to pass on, and it's all about putting your car in the right place and really just putting pressure onto the driver in front. And it's all about finding those lines, nailing your apexes so you can get the best drive out. And any mistake that you make in this sort of position, the likes of Jardier, as we switch to his front splitter view, get a nice view of the rear end of that Mercedes GT3 in front. Van der Velde knows that if he slips up, there are plenty cars behind to snatch away the positions. And you can just see the change in elevation here at Zandvoort. Very few parts of the circuit are actually straight. And you just see the Mercedes kicking up through that fast right-hander through the curb. And it's all about just settling in, making sure you manage your tires. 44 degrees on track, Jesse. It is going to be hot and difficult to manage, as we see the pressure being still put on there by Grant Smith in that 1-2-1. Maybe slightly less than we saw on the previous lap, But he's, of course, got the likes of Ismail Lebrec, who had that incident in the start of the race. So he's kind of out of position and potentially going to be keeping Grant Smith from really putting the pressure onto Jaroslav Hanzik at this point.
Yeah, I mean, at one of the points that you saw in the camera work being provided by Ryan Gill here, it shows you the extent of some of the damages on the cars. Those scuff marks, they're not inconsequential. They are damage-based, so that car has some damage on the right side. They've been into somebody else. Be interesting to see Ismail Lebrec as well, because he got clouded really hard in the right rear. But definitely this stuff in Zero car, as you can see, just is not on this side, but on the other side, as the camera will flip around, I promise, right here. Look at that. That is significant damage, Ryan Gill.
Yeah, it definitely is, and one of the things I actually wanted to point out was actually how clean that opening lap was. I mean, you know, a circuit like this, very, very tight down into turn one, the fact that we only saw, you know, just a little a push, really, on the back of Tinko van der Velde's car from Ismail Lebrec, you know, is quite surprising, actually, and it's really nice to see how clean it has been. A few people caught up in some scuffs and incidents over the next couple of laps. But of course, we do have live stewards here today to investigate all the incidents going in and around the circuit.
Yeah, we do, and, well, I think we're going to need it. I think we've just seen the start of the storm here today, because like I said in pre-race, the longer you sit in this queue, look at these queues, these tailbacks, as they're sometimes called. They're going to be completely, I think Phil Vitt thinking about going for somebody there. I think that was Phil Vitt. Is he in the car? I'm unsure if that's him or his teammate. No, that is Mitch Ibanka in the car, not Phil Vitt. But he was absolutely going for one there a second ago, and I think he made that pass. I'm not sure. Anyway, one of the reasons that you don't want to be in a scuffle with someone around here is, based on my findings, you can lose about 2 seconds a lap just by having somebody following you too closely and you're having to drive defensive, or you are side by side with somebody, which is the ultimate no-no around this joint. You can lose about 2 seconds. You can go from being a pro driver to an AM driver real quick, depending on if you're having to race somebody. So getting your own track space, getting out there and not having to fight somebody is at a premium. And of course, we haven't really talked about it yet, Ryan, but pit stops, slower traffic, lap cars, that is going to throw a big monkey wrench in a lot of people's races in a big way. And we saw it come into play at Misano. What is it going to be like here?
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenge, and well, you can already see on the little map here, the 126 there, just down at the bottom, going through a little sequence of corners now, and you can see that there's actually the 555 car is, well, one of the first back markers. They've already been into the pit lane once, so they're kind of out of sequence, if you will. There is a car stationary in the pit lane at this moment in time. So, you know, traffic it's going to start happening sooner rather than later. And like you said, Jesse, it's going to be so difficult to use the traffic around this circuit because it is so tight, it is so difficult to overtake. And it's going to mean, you know, how you navigate through those lapped cars is going to be probably the biggest difference between winning or losing this race, as we see Jordan Grant-Smith just making a slight mistake there into turn one, and Ismail Lebrec almost had it done.
Yeah, I think Tarzan Bach, turn one is really that opportunity that a lot of drivers look for, because you can kind of press the braking zone and you can really use the slipstream of the start-finish straight to put pressure on the driver in front of you. You force them into a line that they go to, and you always try and have a look down through turn one. So I feel like that's going to be a area of hot contention during the duration of this race, as Ismail Lebrec continues to chase down Grant Smith. And Grant Smith here is starting to feel a little bit of pressure. You see the back end of that Porsche also not quite agreeing with him 100%. Every single time it kicks out just a tiny bit, that's a small hundredth that Ismail Lebrec snatches up. And the number 9 Ferrari is going to keep this pressure on until he can find that chink in the armor. And the big mistake coming out from the Porsche, runs very wide, eats the curbs coming out. An inside line from Lebrec. Side by side they'll go. but Grant Smith will still have the inside line coming back in to the final 2 corners. So for now, the Porsche survives, and it just goes to show you that Zandvoort, an extremely hard circuit to pass, and it could be here down the start finish straight, and immediately defensive goes Grant Smith in that Porsche, and it will be Lebrecht to go side by side into Tarzanbacht. They will go, and later on the brakes, but round the outside, the inside line most certainly be favorable, and the drive coming out from that 1-2-1 Porsche gonna give him a little bit of breathing room for at least another lap, as Carsten in that 222 Lamborghini marked with the AM plate. I mean, the Audi in the with the AM plates is really starting to also just reel in these drivers in front. And of course, them battling out, Jason, you mentioned it. As soon as they go side by side or they start having to go defensive, that costs them those lap times. And this is exactly what Carsten is looking for as he makes his way back up through the order. And seeing those AM plates so far up, stacked up with the pros, you can certainly see that he's got some potential to go up quite far in the sim racing world and community.
Oh, there's an Audi backwards there in that turn. Yes, that is going to be Lubomir Zeman. Lubomir Zeman has lost it. We're going to see if Ryan Gill can't pick that up, and indeed he has. So here he goes through the 4th and 5th turns. Does he just lose it under braking, I wonder? Nobody close enough around him. So here we go. It's going down into the bowl here. Does he just get a little sideways? Indeed he does. Overcooks it into the carousel. And my goodness, that is a beach you can visit at Zandvoort, but not the one that you want to put your beach towel on. And that has cost him a ton of spots. He was way out there in the dirt. Egger leading this race, but Arnold in 2nd place. What are we watching here on replay, I wonder? Did he get a little out of sorts, or let's see. Was that a pass being made here? This is interesting. Ryan's queued up a replay. Very curious what we're going to see. Oh, okay. I see.
So Arnold doing a good job there to get himself up into 2nd position. And I mean, you guys mentioned it last week. They didn't quite have the best race out for themselves. Grant, he's lost a lot of positions down the order in that 1-2-1. So he's been passed out by Lebrecht and Carsten at this point. So the Porsche struggling just a wee bit, and at the moment I think just going to be regaining the confidence again, just going to slot back in behind the 2 lead cars in front and see that he can find some of that rhythm once again. You know, it can be so hard. We talked about it, Jesse, that defense, your tires, they start to let go, the small mistakes that you make, and it can all go wrong. But where it's not going wrong is for Matthias Egger. The Orion race team number 126 Mercedes leads us away here as he begins his 9th lap out on circuit. And a really good start was all that they needed to give themselves the...
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. I think that was a bit more serious than it originally appeared there, Mr. George Smith. I think there were a couple of people that came together. I think this... Yes, I think... Oh, my goodness! An RKO out of nowhere. That will absolutely be a steward's inquiry. Hops the curb, Dukes a hazard, Randy Orton's, and absolutely beaches himself. That is not sporting right there, and I think the stewards will take a very dark stance towards that sort of driving.
Interesting point. It was one of the Mercedes cars, wasn't it, that they were caught up with. That car going very, very slow on that section of the track. So I'd be interested to see what the steward's inquiry into that is, because that Mercedes car was going much slower than racing speed.
Yeah, you're right.
It certainly was. It almost looked to be limping round, and it looked like the Lamborghini almost had to try and switch up his line at the last minute and got a little bit snapbacky. I think it looked a little bit worse.
He got what?
A little bit snapbacky.
Okay.
You've never driven a Lambo and had it go snapbacky on you, Jesse Lee?
I don't think I've ever called it that. That has absolutely occurred, but I don't think I've referred to it in that way.
well, you know, when it happens, I know one day you'll yell it out and think of me as Van der Velde here, trying to make his way through some lap traffic as well. Got the pressure of Jardier behind, and this is the nature of Zandvoort, where some of the drivers haven't had that picture perfect race starts. They're going to be out of position, they're going to be down the order, and you then have to find yourself in amongst traffic whilst trying to hold on to your positions. And good driving standards coming out from all our drivers. We see the Audi jumping out of the way of the little 3-pack leader field of Arnold van der Velde and, of course, Jaroslav Hanzik. And the three of them really pushing each other at the moment. A 5-second time penalty coming in to Lebrecht in the number 9. So that collision, I believe, at the start of the race may have been the reason for that. You know, if one of you guys has some more insights into that. But that was the notable incident that I seem to remember, where he was caught up in 5 seconds, going to be handed out to him.
Yeah, what I'm going to do here, because we have the steward's box is right beside ours for those that aren't initiated, but they keep handing me slips of paper, and Nico keeps tapping me on the shoulder. I'm going to make sure they're done before I start reading this laundry list of early penalty reports, but actually I think they're done right about now. So I will say, lap 1 incident involving the number 13 and the 555 drive-through given to the number 13. Lap 1 incident involving the number 9 of Lebrecht and the number 66, 5-second penalty for the number 9 car. You heard George Smith tell you that as it happened live. Then there was the T15 incident on lap 1. I'm not sure if we saw that one, but it involved the 99, the 269, and the 46. It was deemed that the 269 was at fault there, given a 15-second penalty for causing an incident. Then on lap 2, turn 1, the 888 and the number 420, 15-second penalty for the 888, causing a collision, as Nico is going to hand me more papers than they are in the entire office if he keeps this up.
So the live stewards are hard at work, and we thank them greatly for their work. I mean, I can't imagine what it must be like to sit through 2 hours of stewarding in a race like this, but of course they do it, and we're incredibly grateful for them, because someone has to do it, and if it wasn't them, it would probably have to be one of the three of us, and I don't think anyone wants us in the stewarding box handing out penalties, because I think we'd become very unpopular very, very quickly.
They'd be waiting for us in the parking lot.
That's for sure. So, yeah, Tinko van der Velde, of course, he did lose that place to Sean Arnold on the start because of the collision with Ismail Lebrecht, so that's why there was a 5-second penalty being given. If Tinko van der Velde hadn't have lost the place and he'd remained in second, I believe they probably wouldn't have penalised that. But due to the loss of time, that's the penalty that they have given Lebrecht, because that's what they estimate that Tinko van der Velde probably lost in that incident. And I think 5 seconds is quite fair.
Yeah, I mean, that's not going to end your race. Lebrecht can, that team can come back from this. Again, not the end of the world. The number 9, as they've shown, they've passed a couple of cars already. It might be consequential at the end if they can't quite catch that next car in front of them, but it's not race ending. Certainly the podium dream is alive for them. And by the way, they did get by Grant Smith earlier, and Karsten actually in the AM class followed suit as well. So score Lebrecht up to 5th place. And in addition to that, Mitchell Bonka did get past Mikkel Sundstrom for that 9th place position. So mark the number 25 Audi in 9th place as well.
Martin Lawrence got a little bit of pressure on from the likes of Lucas Rommel at this stage. And it looks like Stefan Zero also just lurking in this, waiting to pounce if the opportunity presents itself. And at this stage of the race, it's also not a bad thing to just get yourself into a place where you can just settle in, follow behind the car in front, get a bit of a tow down the aero bits of the track that you can, and just sort of plan out your next sort of stages of the race, your pit stops, your driver swaps, and everything that's involved with that. On board with the Project Alien number 44, aptly named so with the paint job. I mean, that's how I picture aliens, being bright green. They really could be multiple colors, but I'm sure there is the Project Alien bright green out there. And the number 44 here, chasing down Mikael Sundström, and the 899 Audi just having to get a little bit more defensive at this sort of stage. You know, you've got the driver behind you putting on the pressure. You've got the lap times between the two of them being very similar at this point. I mean, Dedicek did a 1:37.248 on his last lap, and a 1:37.467 coming out from Sundström. So 2/10 lost out for Sundström, and you can just see Dedicek is looking to see if there's perhaps an opportunity to get by. If he's got 2/10 on him consistently, he's going to want to make sure he can turn that into a place position and get himself into the top 10, which of course Sundström currently holds down.
Yeah, I mean, his intentions are obvious, Dedicek. So he's not following in Sundström's tire tracks. He is trying to get every little bit of track, every little opportunity possible, so that if Sundström does slip up ever so slightly, he'll be in the proper position, hopefully, to be able to go ahead and initiate and make that pass. I know a lot of people prefer to be hunting than leading. I've always been the opposite. I enjoy leading. I enjoy being the person that's driving defensive. I enjoy making life difficult for other people, is what I'm admitting.
Be honest
right
with
here.
me, Jesse, how often are you leading and having to go defensive?
That's not relevant. What is relevant is whenever I do a darn good job of keeping people behind me.
You know, it's not leading if they're waving blue flags at you, right?
I'm no longer talking to George Smith. Back to you, Ryan.
So, Mikael Sundström, caught in the middle of the Project Alien Aston Martin and, of course, the Booker Motorsport Audi. Of course, Wolf Batushka, probably the most well-known driver of that team alongside Phil Vitt and Mitja Bonker, not present for this championship. But Mitja Bonker and Phil Vitt doing a fantastic job either way. And, of course, we'll be seeing James Parker taking over the number 44 Aston Martin later on in this race. Of course, Project Alien, the name given to that Aston Martin based on the idea that James Parker is going to help Ondrej Dedicek get up to Alien level by the end of this championship. A rather noble goal, and one that I'm quite fearful of, because I was around Ondrej Dedicek's pace the last time I raced him, so if he's significantly faster the next time I race him, then I know who to blame.
But I mean, Ryan, it can almost be expected, partnering up with the likes of James Parker there and going under this task. I mean, what a legend in the sim racing community, and what a cool little project for them to sort of undertake together. So I fear that you're just going to have to prepare the wave goodbye, unless you can get James Parker to partner up and put you in a Project Alien car as well, maybe? Could you?
I think I think James Parker would rather beat his head on a brick wall than share a car with me, but I could be wrong. I definitely could be wrong, but no, yeah, James Parker, you know, one of those big names in the ACC community, as we're starting to see Marco Ripper all over the back of Schwencek. And yeah, you know, James Parker, he's been around pretty much all the communities. I'm pretty sure everyone knows James Parker by now, and if you don't know him, well, you're going to get to know his name fairly quickly. And, you know, competes at the top in a lot of esports level stuff. I mean, he's even qualified for the latest, is it Ferrari esports event that's happening on
Yes, it is in AC.
Yep.
That's it.
So he's qualified for that, and of course he drove for Coach Dave Academy in the SRO Esports Series Silver.
He's a very decorated name out there, and has really contributed a lot to the sim racing community. It's always cool to have people like that, you know, involved in RCI events. It's awesome to have everybody out on the field as we carry on following along with Marco Ripper in what is a very, very nice liveried Mercedes, I have to say so myself. I'm not normally a big fan of matte cars, but I think I have mentioned this before, but we have seen sort of something similar. I believe it was probably on a Jag in these sort of army colors. Switching over to some more action though on circuits, it looks like Mashant is pressuring the likes of Zeman, and Zeman putting the pressure on to Boot. So into into the pit lane. That's going to be a big dive out, and that's going to allow Zeman to just get that position for free. I feel like Booth is kind of just happy that he didn't make a collision along that emergency exit into the pits. It looks like the likes of Mashant, though, is going to be able to also try and see if he can sneak through under the pressure now, as Booth in that 666 McLaren needs to get onto the defensive really hard. He's got a whole bunch of cars up behind him, and right now he knows that he's a little bit of a cork in the bottle. Mashant here all over the back of the 720S, and Jordan Booth doing a pretty good job considering he lost the position down the straights and could have easily lost out to the likes of Mashant as well in class. They are for position, so losing to Zeman, not really what he was fighting for anyway in his in-class battles, as it looks like Ruvert is going to have a little look through. Is that Ruvert behind him, Ryan? Has Ruvert just got through on the inside line? It has.
That is indeed.
That is the drive coming through, and it looks like Ruvert just going to sneak his way through the likes of that Lexus from Mashant, as I feel like there was some blue flags being waved in that pack, and driver's not quite sure who was coming through. Big slow coming out from the McLaren, and Jordan Booth in that 666 has lost out a little bit.
Look
big
at
slide
that!
Coming out. He catches it, but big drifty boy.
Drift competition. That is not the fastest way around here, as Merchant's trying to get around Booth here. You think he's going to do it on the inside. Easy peasy lemon squeezy gets out of there. That car right there is not for position, I believe. That Porsche there, that is on a different lap and also in a different class. But this is a big fight here. This is a fight for second and third in the AM class. And now Booth has been demoted all the way back to third, or maybe even out of third. We're going to find out, as that Porsche's getting all sorts of racy behind him. Indeed, he has been demoted out of third in class. Merchant passing him. Merchant promoted to third. Booth down to fourth in that class. He's got to get that pro car out from behind him before something unfortunate happens and he loses more spots. One thing that I noticed, and I think we all noticed, I think you'd have to be not watching to notice how out of shape that McLaren was.
Yeah, I mean, he's lucky to have kept it on the tarmac. And Carl Mathers in that number 86 behind him is, of course, down in 31st place and out of position. So he's trying to make his way through this traffic, has to make sure he doesn't get too interfere with any of the cars that he comes across. And we got Van der Velde, that number 66, still chasing down the 38 of Arnold, currently in the car. And these three drivers, the likes of Arnold, Van der Velde, and Hanzik, have been nose to tail since the start of this race. And nobody yet to give up or give out that position. So everybody out on circuit pushing to what they really can. 136.8 from Arnold last lap, a 36.9 from Van der Velde, and a 36.8 from Hanzik. So Van der Velde, as you would expect, kind of a little bit slower, as he has to be very much cautious of how close he follows onto Arnold. Get onto the brakes a little bit earlier, making sure he doesn't come into contact if he is in those sort of proximities. And Jody are just loving this in that number 39, just holding on. Tego van der Velde is going to jump into the pits, and not a bad movement to do so. Going to slam onto the brakes and get onto that pit limiter. So after a really good little battle there, after driving out in the car for almost 30 minutes, going to dive into the pits and allow Arnold and Hanzik to remain out on circuit battling it out, Jesse.
Yes, indeed. More news from the stewards. Lap 4 incident coming through. And by the way, Mr. Fabian Schmedberger has been along to say to not go into the steward's room. Veins are already popping out of head steward Jake Boswell's head. On the 4th lap, an incident involving the 224, the 69, and the 299. 15-second penalty for the 224, causing a incident. And I am told, whispered in my ear, that these penalties are going to continue to keep coming.
Yeah, it's big work that the stewards put on there, and like Ryan said, you can't thank them enough for doing this task for the duration of the series, and sitting in and making sure that drivers behave themselves is what really governs the field, and make sure that people know that bad driving standards aren't tolerated, and they have to make sure that they have those clean races out on the circuit. So big thanks to the racing stewards, and of course keeping us informed with where things stand. Of course, if you are watching over on the YouTube channel as well, a massive thank you for joining us, or whatever time zone it happens to be, morning or evening. Arnold going to dive into the pits, and once again we're going to see a very interestingly close pass by, as Jody are not quite aware that Arnold was peeling into the pits, and it's a very dangerous pit entry here at Zandvoort. Jardia stays out, goes up into second place temporarily until their car goes through into serve their pit stops. Matthias Egger really having a great race up at the front for now, but as we see these pit stops start to happen, that's where things can start to get pretty interesting out on circuit.
Yeah, of course, it's going to be quite dangerous for a lot of these guys coming into the pit lane because of how difficult it is to overtake around here. You want as much slipstream as you can, and of course that means coming out of the final corner, people are going to be right on the back of your bumper, and of course if you have to slow down and peel into pit lane, I've seen it far too many times where you get rear-ended into the pit lane and you get a drive-through penalty for speeding. So it's an interesting one, and a lot of these guys are going to have to be careful of it, because obviously if you do rear-end someone into the pit lane and you cause them to get a drive-through, you better believe that the stewards are going to return fire on that penalty.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost expected. Our stewards are, they're trained, aren't they? Our stewards, they're trained, and they know the difference, and they know exactly what they're looking for out there. And whenever you run afoul of the very obvious rules, well, penalties do occur. Maximilian Woolmuth here. We haven't talked about him at all. He's just sort of been in limbo back here in that number 16 Audi. That's Team Greenlight. Saw him out in practice. I don't know if they've been involved in an incident, or they may have very well been. But I sort of expected them a little bit further up than they are right now, but they're out here managing their pace, gonna follow them.
they just let Olaf Leffer go through down that start-finish straight. So it certainly, maybe just a little bit of tactics. They don't want to have any pressure and destroy their tires. Maybe they already are struggling, so they can't go defensive. But switching over to Fulvert for Muka Motorsport. They currently find themselves there in 14th place, slotted in between Ari Conway and Nicholas Bosselet. And again, it's this mid-pack that we see sort of the most action really happening. We've had a couple of interesting just follow-alongs up towards the front of the order, but the mid-pack is really where all the drivers find themselves pretty evenly matched out. And on a circuit like Zandvoort, so tight and twisty, the moniker of Tin Top Racing, not really too many places to get by. It's all about waiting for some margins of error, as we see Fulvert going alongside with a Lexus that I don't believe is for position, and they will touch as they go through.
I think this was full position. I think this was the 42 coming out of pit lane. It was.
Oh, it was. Oh, you got you.
Ooh, very, very close on pit exit there. And I think that was Stefan Zero's car.
I think you're right.
That Martin Schumacher has now taken over, I believe. and getting very, very close. Ooh, bit of contact there as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Muka Motorsports Audi may be running a little bit deep through T5. Not really on the inside apex, but we've mentioned it before. Side by side at Zandi's, not always the easiest task. And our drivers here coming away with not too much contact between them. As Bosselets also looks like he's got through on the likes of 0-2. So for the moment, once again, they just kind of fight out their way towards getting into the top 10. More pit stop strategies to be served, as we see Carsten was in the pits temporarily, Ripper in the pits, who was in P3. Phil Witz is going to have a little look, and oh, that's a big squeeze coming down, and that's Mikael Sundstrom going sideways on the track. He's been spun around. Witz misses the braking point, will be into the gravel, and it was now Harry Conway in the car. So he's taken over the car, and they are going to come into a little bit of a collision zone. So Conway gets caught up in some traffic there, tries to go down defensive, and there wasn't really space coming down there. And the contact coming through, he's gone all the way around. Luckily not picking up any contact with other cars on the circuit. And it will be a big crash coming up for the 899. Yeah, Ryan.
I'm just, I don't know. I'm a bit surprised that Phil Witt went for that. I mean, also, Harry Conway chose his line very early to defend, which he has every right to do. But I think, I don't know. I think did Phil Witt commit too soon to trying to get that move?
I mean, I'm almost on the same side as you there. I feel like there wasn't really a space to go through there. And when you have committed then to the inside line, any way that you're going to then pass is going to be exceeding the solid white lines on the right. So I don't think there was really space. And unfortunately there for the nearly on pace Triple R collab team, it has not gone the right way. So they find themselves now in that unlucky 13th spot and with an unlucky amount of damage to their vehicle too. A little bit of active aero flapping on the front end of that Audi.
Big development over the course of the race though. The 126 Mercedes of the Orion race team has lost out in the pit stops. They've dropped from the lead of the race to 4th.
I mean, that is actually a massive movement down. So Fulvio Barzini here, is he, I mean, did he, I'm not quite even sure what had happened there. I mean, if the chat has any sort of insight from the team's perspective, let us know. But I mean, that's going to be massive then for the likes of Darren King.
They had about a 5-second lead, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
so,
it was about 4.8 seconds the last time I saw it. So something is.
They've lost about 8 seconds, roughly. Around abouts. So something definitely going on there.
Maybe having a mistake coming out earlier. I'm not even... Again, it's all theory craft coming down because Darren King, Valentin Barrier, and Joe McCauley are the new drivers in charge of the front of the order. Of course, the number 38, the 39, and the 66. Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Mercedes. Mercedes? Mercedes?
Definitely Mercedes. And, well, Darren King now leads the way, doesn't he? In the number 38. Of course, it was Sean Arnold that was in that car at the start of the race. And obviously Darren King now taking over. And Darren King, I would imagine, is the quicker of the two drivers in the Fordzilla car. And here we see Valentin Barrier under a bit of pressure, and now Joe McCauley under a bit of pressure as well, as Fulvio Barazini is going to look to go round the outside of the Side Max Motorsport Mercedes. Is he going to get it done? No, not quite. But he's going to have the drive now down the back straight. Is the Orion Race Team car in front? Yes, he is.
What a move coming out there from the 126. I mean, the Side Max number 66 almost feels robbed blind out of that. And good job from Barrier there to not let it be a little too calm maneuver coming out. And Barazini then going to have a little bit of fresh air in front of him to now catch up to Barrier. Needs to get himself a little bit closer in terms of being able to shoot his shots. And Macaulay still going to just hang on and zip through. Going to fake a little move to the inside is that red number 66. But tucks back in, as you would expect, to just make their way through the tight and windy section, which is pretty much the entire lap until they get back to the start-finish straight, Jesse.
I think Jesse Lee is not with us for the moment, so we'll wait for him to get back to us. We can see Valentin Barrier now in the number 39 Lamborghini, and then Fulvio Barazini and Joe Macaulay just behind. And it's been an interesting development so far over the first 40 minutes of the race. And of course, Fulvio Barazini, well, the Orion Race Team Mercedes, which was leading the way, now in third place, was fourth, and the two Mercs that were on the front row at the start of the race now not in the top two. It's the Ferrari and the Lamborghini that occupy those spots, and Darren King encountering some traffic, which he has swiftly dispatched. And now this trio are definitely going to have their hands full with a few cars in their way.
Yeah, it's actually very interesting if you think about it. Going back to last week, the issues that Darren King had, turns out it was a clerical error that led Darren King astray, and his team, who were on the back foot after the first pit stop, they did recover quite well, must be said. But this weekend, no such issues out in front here. In this race, like you said, it was going to get mixed up. It is mixed up. Based on this, James Parker is going to be leading after the next pit stop. What do you think?
I mean, entirely possible, but I think it would be quite a sight to see James Parker come all the way up from the 7th place that he is at the moment to lead the race. But I would not put it past his skill set, and I say, oh, we have a Mercedes and an Audi. And I think, is that Harry Conway? We saw Harry Conway get caught up in an incident. I think they had to come back into the pit lane. Yes, they did. And we're going to get a replay here. You can see Darren King going past the yellow Mercedes. And you can see now Harry Conway trying to find a way through.
Oh, dear, he just turns him, and that's so bad. Calamity Corner today is this sort of carousel, and once again, you see somebody gets in there a little deep, and it turns into a big mess. I'm waiting for one of those to turn into a pileup, because I think there's only 2 corners on this entire track that are sighted. The rest are blind corners, and that one included. So that is just terrible. It's hard to see on the camera, folks, but that is a right-hand 180-degree, perhaps even more than that, actually, maybe 220 degrees downhill, turning in on itself. You cannot see at the bottom what you're going to get until you get there. So good driving on everybody else's part to get away from that without further incident. This is Barrier. Barrier is getting hounded by Barazini. That team trying to climb back up to the top spot, and that starts right here by getting in front of Barrier. But that is going to prove to be difficult, as he's going to find out just how wide this Lamborghini can be. And right behind him, of course, that is Macaulay, who would also desperately like to climb up into the podium spots. And in addition to that, maybe a little better, he gets a lot of the curb. Barrier does. Down to Barrier gets a little bit of the curb. That's going to send people wide. He's going to have to get around that lap car, and all that's going to do is slow him down. Can the 66 and Macaulay get around? Macaulay trying to go around the outside, can't quite get it done. We'll have to settle back in line. It is so hard to pass around here, but every time you get beside somebody you think you have a shot, And here we have Berrezzini, who is still on the back wheel. They're going to think about going 3 wide down into the corner, into the chicane, and they absolutely do. Berrezzini is through. Berrier back down to 4th. Look at this, going 3 wide. Incredible images, incredible stuff here as they get it done, and Berrezzini through back into 3rd place. He will attempt, or excuse me, back into 2nd place, I should say. And now Macaulay has Berrezzini all to himself. Or excuse me, Berrier.
Honestly, that could have been put up for a pass of the season, as we see Joe Macaulay now going on the inside there of Barrier. Valentina Barrier potentially losing 2 positions to the Mercs here. And yes, it will be for him. He's going to have to settle in and try and keep his eye on the chalkboard to see where he's made those mistakes, and we'll have to find that place back on track. But honestly, going back over to that move that Berrezzini pulled coming down into that corner, that was just absolutely incredible to see them take those sort of risks. And I think massive respect to all the drivers for keeping to their lines where they needed to be. I think it was a big send from Berrezzini, but he was safely on the brakes and managed to apex himself around. And talking about incredible drivers, we go back over to the Project Alien car switchover. We do have James Parker in the driver's seat. Into 6th place is the number 44, and of course chasing down that number 9 Ferrari of Blanton. It's got the 222 AM leader of now Stricker in the car as the handover has taken place. So a lot of new drivers and driver names, as you will see on the leaderboard on the left side. Drivers all having to be swapped out. This is an Enduro series where 2-man teams share the car, share the same shared car, a shared setup, and get themselves across the line for as many points as they can, depending on where they finish up. An hour and 13 minutes of racing remain here at Zolder, and it's been incredible so far. Really hasn't felt like what we would think of an endurance race coming out to be, and I think that's always the refreshing side of having the driver swaps. Every driver comes in for a stint where they are having a little bit more of a sprint race for themselves. You can share that load out. There's no burnout, right, Ryan?
Yeah, it's the way it'll work is the 2 drivers that they have and required 3 mandatory pit stops. It's 35-minute stints, if I remember correctly. Of course, over the course of the 2-hour race, and it's always interesting sharing a car, because I've kind of encountered this after some of my ventures in endurance racing recently, as we start to see James Parker making his way through some traffic. And it's so interesting having to share a car and having to set up a car for more than just yourself, because you always have the things you like about a car, and everyone else has, as we see the yellow Mercedes again, the 888.
He absolutely destroyed that Armco.
This 888 car has been in the walls more than once so far in this race, and James Parker's going to be hoping that he can dispatch this car fairly quickly. He'll give him a little flash of the lights and he will be passed. So back to my point is that it's so interesting setting up a car for different drivers. You have to find a midway point that both drivers are happy with, and if you don't find that midway point, you can often find yourself in the situation of one driver will do very well and one driver will not do well. And as we alluded to in the previous race at Misano, Jesse, gone are the days where you can have one good driver and one not so good driver. You can't really be carried to an endurance race win anymore. It's just not possible.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, look at all these great teams that have great talent, and they have a superstar esports driver, and then they have a driver that is incredibly quick and of fantastic caliber, but perhaps not quite on the pace. You see they're struggling. A lot of them are inside the top 10, but they're struggling a little bit, and that's the thing. You're only as good, and this is a sentiment of life, people. A team or a chain is only as good as its weakest link, and that's how you base your success. You don't base your success off how good you are, it's how, bad you are, and that's sort of how you plan. And these guys are so competitive that even these all-star teams that we have amassed for this championship, we're blessed to have these guys, but some of these teams are finding themselves on the back foot. It's incredible to me. We saw it last week. We're seeing it again. It's just the way that the racing is now. You have to have a team of all-stars to compete for wins here. And I'm not even talking about pro. AM too. If you're in an AM class, your AM driver, your top AM driver, he better be a silver class driver. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to compete in this series. It's just the fact of the matter.
Yeah, it definitely seems that the kind of average skill level of sim racers has definitely gone up in the last, 9-10 months. I mean, obviously the current global situation has probably contributed to that massively, as has the evolution of sim racing, but it just seems to me now when I go out there and I race in a series, and I don't get to race often, but I look at myself and I say I've improved a lot in the last 10 months. But I'm not fighting any further up the field than I was 10 months ago. And there's a good reason for that. It's because the average level of quality has gone up immensely in the last 10 months.
Oh, yeah.
And we can't be any more grateful for it, because it just means that you can have battles like the one we're watching right now for 14th and 13th place. And, I mean, some of these names, Tobias Geider, Olaf Leffer, these are names that we know quite well within silver categories, of racing, and they've got plenty of skill to them, these drivers.
Yeah, I absolutely suspect that some of the big name esports drivers, they actually kind of like this. I know perhaps they don't necessarily appreciate some of the challenges, but I'm sure they enjoy the racing, because with the quality and the level going up, they have more interesting races. It becomes less about clock management, which, let's be honest, sometimes as a really good superstar team, it is clock management. But recently, like you said, Ryan, it's not been that. They've not had a time to work on the clock, to race against themselves. You have to come out here and you have to race somebody every lap for hours on end. And I suspect that a lot of these teams, it's refreshing and they like that. They like having that competition, because if you didn't like competition, you'd, take up knitting or something, I guess. But we're here and we like competition and they like it too. And all that does is not only help the sport, but it also helps them get better as well. Because like you said, I'm in the same boat. I used to be able to hang out in the top 10. Well, now a lot of these guys, they're absolutely leaving me, as the number 34 AM car has lost it. We're going to see if what happens here. Was there contact? I suspect there might be. So let's go down here. We're coming up to the carousel right here. Oh, no, he just absolutely loses it. Did he touch the grass, I wonder, on the outside? That deadliest of all sins around this place. Touching the grass on the outside, trying to turn the car right, slams both walls and ends up taking a free beach vacation.
Really is not where you want to have those mistakes, is it? And at this stage of the race as well, you're kind of only getting into that midway mark. It's where you really can't afford to be making those kind of mistakes. And I think it goes along the lines of where Ryan's gone with it. The sheer skill gap has just sort of gone to a level where if you aren't putting in the time and efforts almost every day to a lot of the extent of a lot of these drivers who are driving, you just don't have the ability to swing it. Of course, there are talented people out there, but a lot of time and effort goes into being able to pull the laps that these guys are doing and being able to race these fellow GT3 cars at a circuit like Zandvoort, which isn't built for the best of overtaking parts. It goes a long way to say that a lot of driving focus is being spent out here. Valentin Barrier, of course, doing Jardia proud at the moment, holding up and onto third place. As we saw, he was involved earlier on that monster overtake that Barazini threw down. But, just needs to hold down on it. Mawson has taken over the Chris Hayes Sim Racing 1-2-1. And it looks like he's trying to go around the outside of... Is that Stricker behind him there? It looks like Schumacher also getting into the mix here with the likes of, I believe...
I think that was a blue flagged car.
Oh, no. Yeah, blue flag car, correct. And Schumacher here has taken over from Zero as his teammates. They are in the top 10, which is decent for their Lexus. It is the leading Lexus out here in the top 10 as well. So a whole bunch of different manufacturers take to the standings, which is always good to see.
Yeah, I mean, just one final thing to touch up on. George said, yeah, that skill gap, it's evaporated. It doesn't really exist. I mean, that's how you get, see, the 222 of Stricker, they're inside the top 8, or the top 10, I should say. They're in 8th place. They're fighting for it. And the basic way that we tune Pro and Am is consistency, essentially. So that's why there is the skill gap. But as far as raw pace, like you said, there's not a whole lot of difference there. And these guys are absolutely going at it. Tobias Geider in 13th place in the 5-1 for GC Racing. Mercedes is all over, or is getting left all over him. The 166 Porsche looking to get around him. And of course, we're heading into the most dangerous part of the track, in my opinion. Again, we just saw a lap or so ago what happens when you hit the dirt on the outside of the track. He's going to not do that here. Probably a smart decision. But this stack of cars all the way back down to Lima, I think, is back in the background there in 16th place. One false move could see you fall from 13th back to 17th real quick, or from 16th to 13th. I don't think that isn't a real possibility around this joint. Any little thing is a big issue around here. As you see the Mercedes get a little out of sorts there. The Porsche way more planted through that section as we come up to the chicane. Will the Porsche have him under brakes? Nothing doing this time, but this whole line of cars getting held up here by Geider. Geider being as defensive as he possibly can. Could we possibly see a lunge? Nope. Minding his own business is the 166 Porsche. And you see a lot of that kind of driving around here too, where unless you have a sure thing, you're afraid to pull out, because if you pull out, Slizik, Lima, all these guys, they're going to try and get around you too.
I mean, it's so difficult to really plan that move, and we see the big move coming down from the number 7 Bentley there, as Slizik just with the drive against the Porsche down the inside. It was open up for him, and he's going to have the inside line coming through the exit too. So nice drive coming out there from Dusan Slizik in that number 7 Bentley, and now putting the pressure on to the likes of Geider too. So Geider now feeling the Bentley's presence. They are going to, almost just a touch coming out there. Slizik holds on to it, but he has to get off the accelerator pedal. Leffer will lunge towards that opportunity. Just look how close they're going up to.
Was that an actual touch, George?
Winding sections. I think there was a tiny touch coming through, but somehow holding on to it. And for now, it will be Geider to defend against Dusan Slizik. The Bentley versus the Mercedes, almost at that hour-long mark, and these drivers still pushing like there's only 10 minutes left on the clock. Very wide coming out from left and behind. I don't know if that's allowed Lima to get alongside in that Aston Martin. Looks like Lima is going to slot in from behind there. So even behind Slizik, there are some moves going down. The Phoenix Racing Portugal, number 675 Aston Martin, finds a little position in the scrabbles that are going on circuit in front of him.
Yes, indeed. Going to do a little bit of cleanup here. Incident between the 18 and the 33, a 15-second penalty for the 33. An incident between the 899 and the number 25 Audi. 5-second penalty given to the 25 for that incident. Incident between the 16 and the 25. 5-second penalty for the 16. 25 being involved in a lot of incidents, apparently. The 46 and the 33 incident. 15-second penalty given to the 46, deemed at fault there. And then a incident down into turn 11 on the 17th lap, the most recent penalty we've received between the 16 and the 777. 15 seconds given for causing a collision to the number 16. And I think they're actually getting a breather right now as some of the early race chaos has finally petered out here at the halfway mark, guys. Halfway through the race, 2 pit stops left to go, though. What are your takeaways from the first half, Ryan Gill?
Well, the pit stops are the most important thing ever, and I think we talked about it at Misano, and it's been proven here, hasn't it, with the likes of the 126 Orion race team. They lost out in the pit stops somehow, whether they missed their pit box on entry, whether they stalled the car on exit, or whether they got caught up in traffic on the outlap from the pit lane. You know, we said it time and time again, the pit stops would define the order of the race more than overtakes, and that has been so true here as we still watch Slizik trying to get past Geider, and in fact he's going to be on the outside. I think Geider's pulling into the pit lane. Yes, that's the why he slowed down, so Slizik will go past as we hit the halfway mark. And as we've hit the halfway mark of the race, I think it is appropriate that we mention our partners for Racing Club International, of course those being Race Department, AK Informatica, and Raceface Speed Labs. And we're all very grateful for Race Department, AK Informatica, and Raceface partnering up with RCI. We should have some interesting benefits for you guys concerning Raceface, and another partner that we'll have coming on board fairly soon. So lots of interesting stuff coming out for, obviously, all you RCI Discord users. You'll be able to get your hands on some unique affiliate codes for certain things very soon, and we'll keep you up to date with all of that as we go out throughout the weekend. And I think coming up to the 12 Hour of Bathurst in just 2 weeks' time, I've heard a rumour, Jesse Lee, that I've heard a rumour that, like we had at the 6 Hours of Barcelona, there may be prizes on offer again.
Oh my goodness, I gotta tell you, it gave me goosebumps whenever we were announcing the prizes for the 6-hour race. It's happy times here at RCI indeed, and we're glad that you guys are with us as well. Thank you for tuning in on your Friday evening, watching some racing with us here on RCI TV. And as Tico van der Velde is making a pass here on Dedicek, pass made, no harm, no foul there into the chicane. Or not, into the chicane indeed. Kind of feel like Dedicek sort of allowed that to happen. Smart racing, and kudos from me. But like I was saying, thank you guys for being with us here tonight on RCI TV. Glad that you're with us. Hope that you're enjoying the second round of the Endurance Championship. I'd like to invite you all to go ahead and like and subscribe if you haven't already. You do know we race more often than not around here. Pretty much, I'd say about half of the weekdays and weekends are filled with racing. Why not go ahead and subscribe and hit that bell? Make sure you do not miss a single race, because they are, we can all agree, usually very competitive and very chaotic. And today you're seeing more of the same, with Darren King taking the lead on that pit stop from Berrezzini and the 126 team. It must be said, though, Berrezzini is catching up now that I've just noticed this. It was 4.5 seconds, guys. It was 3 seconds last lap, and now it's down to 2.2. So the raw pace of the 126 seems to be coming back up here, as Darren King, no slouch, of course, an incredibly fast sim racer. Must be colorblind, though, with the way that he paints his cars. But other than that,
wow.
But other than that,
I mean, just shots fired at his unique paint job that is noticeable on circuit. I don't hate it.
I quite like it.
I like it too.
Well, back in February, I made a joke that he could make his cars more distinct, and ever since then, he has one-upped us every series that he's entered with a very unique car. I actually quite like that, all jokes aside. I like Darren King's style.
Now he happens to like it after he gets
No. I said last week.
How I remember him.
I said last week I liked it.
Can I just mention, he did a 1:37.1 on his last lap, which was pretty slow compared to the 1:36.7 that Berrezzini did do. So I think a good good eye to see out there that he is perhaps struggling just a tiny bit with his car at the moment, and Barazini just still finding some more rhythm there. So, I mean, you can backstroke as much as you like about hating on Mr. Tolkien's Ferrari, and then suddenly happening to like it when Ryan and myself also happen to like it. But you're invited to the club. You don't have to force your way in.
Last week, I mentioned this every time we talk about Darren King, about how he specifically makes his cars distinct. And I always thought that was quite fascinating, because most people, they come out here and they want a comprehensive livery, but he likes wild-looking cars. And I've always liked that about the man. I've always liked that he pushes the bar, and he always says, well, I can make it uglier. And that's a personal goal. It is not a dig at anybody, because he does it on purpose. And I think accidentally sometimes he makes works of art that are sometimes offensive to the eyeballs. Lebrecht here running in 4th place, doing fairly well considering. Remember, he had that penalty for that flap 1 incident, and also subsequently fell down the field. Started in 3rd place, was as low as 6th or 7th. He's fought his way back up to 5th. He's quite a ways off of the top 4, it must be said, but for a recovery drive for a day that could have went bad to worse considering the half spin and the penalty, I would say he's done pretty well to keep it in the top 5.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I mean, it was a negligible incident early on. It didn't really not work out for him too much, but from then on out, it's been pretty magical. He just needs to find himself in this sort of spot towards the closing phases of the race. But I don't know that Zandvoort really allows for people to get complacent and get too comfy out on the circuit. We've kind of seen it throw those curveballs out to anyone that was in that situation. King into the pits, so Barazini going to resume over on that race lead. So hopefully the 126 Mercedes not going to have any of those pit issues that they had earlier on, as Bunker here having a nice little scrap on circuit with Rommel, that number 137.
So lots of changing around now. Pit stops going on, and something interesting that I have noticed is that Ismail Lebrecht in the number 9 has jumped ahead of the number 39 car that Valentin Barrier was driving, and has now been taken over by Jaroslav Honzek.
Yeah, that's... I suppose... Yeah, that's a... I'm trying to figure out, and I'm sorry for stammering, I'm trying to figure out that strategy of when they are going to put that final driver in. They must be thinking that they're going to come in incredibly late, perhaps, and I think that will be a theme that you see with several of the other drivers as well, and that might... I'm stalling because I'm trying to do the math, and I think that might work out for them, actually. That might be
Jesse Lee
the
is
best
doing
strategy.
maths on
I didn't
stream
mention.
again.
I did not mention the calculator this time. I merely mentioned that I was attempting to figure out what this strategy is, and I think, ladies and gentlemen, that it might actually work.
Well, Jordan Grandsmith in the 121 has taken back over for the CHSR Porsche. He's got Stefan Zero now hunting him down in the Lexus, and it's not been the best of races so far for Stefan Zero and Martin Schumacher. Of course, they finished the race with a podium last time out at Misano. Not looking like they'll be getting a top 5 here today, considering the fact that they're, about 13 seconds off, I think, and everyone else is now in sequence with their pit stops, so it's going to be it's going to require quite the drive from the likes of Stefan Zero and Martin Schumacher in the second half of this race if they want to get a top 5 finish. But not looking too bad for them, I have to say. I mean, keeping it, if you can keep a result within the top 10, you keep yourself well within contention for a championship, and considering how long this championship is, 8 races, there's going to be a lot more opportunities to claw back points if you have a bad race. But looking at how some of the cars have performed over the course of the first 2 races, I think that the Orion race team, if they're going to be up in the top 3 every race, they're going to be hard to beat this season.
Yeah,
Ryan, I think that's exactly what people need to do out here, is that because we've got such a long season, right? Consistency trumps just one-off finishes. So if you can come through and get yourself towards the front of the order time in, time out, that's going to count a lot more than having a big one-off finish in a select few races. So I think a lot of the drivers here are aiming to try and get some of that consistency going and find those consecutive points, because in a championship we know how much it counts. Just showing up at the end of the day when it comes into the closing rounds goes to determine quite a few drivers in the mid-pack battles. So you have to make sure that you're in the race, you have to make sure you get to the line, and you have to make sure you do it every time.
I think I might be able to shine a light on why that 888 was puttering around the track earlier, guys. It appears Nico has slipped me a piece of paper. Lap 25, turn 8 incident involving the 899 of Sundstrom and the 888 Mercedes. 15-second penalty for car 899, causing a incident. So apparently the 899 and the 888 got into an incident, and that might have been earlier why we saw him and why he probably still is limping around a bit, if indeed that is what happened.
Yeah, so penalties starting to come out, and they have slowed down. Like you said, Jesse, the steward's getting a bit of a breather now. And we're on lap 42 so far of this race. It is Sean Arnold that leads in the 38 Fordzilla Ferrari. And of course, Matthias Egger now back in the Orion race team Mercedes. That gap now back up to 3.4 seconds. So it seems that they have gained a bit more time in the pit stops again.
I don't know how one team, speaking of the 38 Ferrari, I do not see how one team went from losing so much time last week to being the quickest on and off pit road this week. It could be the track, it could be the car, it could be, maybe they practiced it a little bit. I don't know. But for one thing, it was 1.8 seconds whenever the 38 entered pit road. And after the 126 came back around, after all those pit stops were taken care of, it was 3.4 seconds. So whatever in the world may have happened, that 38 Ferrari team has figured out how to game the system in pit road, and they have just been absolutely on it. And if they win this race today, they can thank the excellent driving out there to stay out of trouble early. Keep in mind, remember the big kerfuffle there was to start this race? They were in the mix of that, and they maintained their distance from that, social distancing and all that, and they ran close enough to the front all day so that whenever pit stops occurred, they could get that lead. And now, again, we're going to have to see if Egger can catch up, because if he can't, this win today, consistency and strategy. That's exactly what George was talking about. Your consistency is key. Could today be the day that the 38 team gets right back into this championship after a tough week one? Could we be talking about the 38 beating the 126 to the championship? I'm excited. I can't wait. 6 more rounds of this.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be exciting for sure. And obviously, the Fordzilla Ferrari, they finished 12th last week at Monza. And, a win is exactly what they need here today to really ignite a championship fight. And I'm pretty sure that the Orion race team, they will definitely still lead the championship if they finish second, because obviously the Sidemax Motorworks, Mercedes is currently 4th, so they're not gaining any points on them. So Orion race team will still lead as it stands, but I think that, there will be a couple more teams well and truly in the championship fight after this race. And it's going to be really, really interesting to see how all this develops, of course, over the course of the season. Of course, once we're finished, we'll have done 25% of the season. But like you said, Jesse, still 6 rounds to go. And the hardest circuits on the calendar are still yet to come.
Yeah, I mean, Zandvoort is a tough mistress for sure, but we mentioned at the top of the show, or excuse me, rather, you mentioned at the top of the show just how difficult the end of this schedule is going to be. Those final 3 races are going to be a gauntlet for these guys, but I think it's also good. We didn't really talk about it too much, but we're going to have a mid-season break for that 12-hour Bathurst race in the middle of October. By the way, everybody, again, like and subscribe and make sure that you are there. 12 uninterrupted hours of Mount Panorama. You are going to want to see that. But I think they're almost going to need that halfway point in the season, that sort of week off. Not that these guys are going to take that week off. Most of these teams, if not all of these teams, are going to be at Bathurst in some capacity or another. But they almost need that for this championship. You get to the halfway point, you reassess where you are, you reassess your goals, what you need, and you never know. The second half could be completely different to the first half, but one thing is for sure here, Egger is catching Arnold. I was going to say not by a lot, but that's incorrect. It's a significant amount of time elapsed, several tenths. So we're going to see here in about another 7 or 8 laps, we'll see. I reckon at that point they will be nose to tail if this trend continues.
I mean, Matthias Egger, he's got the pace himself to reel in the likes of Sean Arnold there. So I'm hoping that when we get into the closing sort of phases of the race, the final 20-minute sprint, as if the 2 hours that we watched here hasn't felt like a sprint, but when you get into that where all the pit strategies are out, so you're onto your final driver and you really are racing down to the line, I think there's going to be so many interesting battles that will develop, not just at the front of the order, but down towards the likes of like the cars that we're looking at now, Marco Ripper in that 514, and of course 7 behind him in that number 7, he's putting some pressure on. I think all the AM drivers have also come out with some impressive skill sets too. AM and Silver drivers putting themselves into the likes of Ruvert here. That 888 that we've seen involved in quite a few sideways action moments, not really the race that they wanted to have. They find themselves down in 24th overall, and some races just go that way, Ryan. They don't always go the way that you planned.
No, they don't. I've had quite a few of those races myself, and had one fairly recently, actually. 12-hour endurance race at Spa, which was cut down to an 11-hour for technical issues, but nonetheless, we got into the last 2 hours of the race, and unfortunately, game over. And it can be like that sometimes. You can have races that are going very well that then just have that one moment and that's it, race over, or you can have races where everything just seems to be collapsing around you, and trust me, those are the hardest ones to recover from, because you finish those races and you think to yourself, do I want to continue next week? It really does set you on a downer, and you've just got to overcome it, come back next week and do better.
It's hard, and it's a game of getting over that mentality of feeling that bad things keep happening, and it's an easy slump to fall into. And it's part of that sim racing side where you start taking it a little bit more seriously. It can eat at you, and you feel like that nothing you're doing is working, and sometimes it just takes a step back, a reset, and attack the track again from a different setting, getting some help from the community, watching guided setup videos, and looking out for anyone that's offering services to get you better. Ruvich here just trying to hold on to Booth then makes the mistake, and the 666 gets sent out in
Did he
nasty
touch
fashion.
The inside wall?
No, there was no none. After the I think little tap little love
taparoo
side. Tap wrap my gap, boom screw.
George G. Max Smith on the base today, ladies and gentlemen.
This is this is what you have when you put 3 commentators of very different nationalities, but all speak English as a primary language. You do tend to get some creative words, and and lingo used in the commentary. But
I like to tell people that I speak one language and I don't even know how to speak that one properly. So yeah, English sometimes
George, I can relate.
just escapes me.
I can relate.
Well, I mean, all Americans I think can relate, Jesse.
Well, moving right along there, Jordan Booth back here in the 666, that sinister numbered car. A fan favorite, or not fan favorite, a favorite of mine anyway. I appreciate that they resisted painting that car bright red and went for red accents. But I'll tell you one thing about this AM class. I expected that AM class to come back together here late in the race like it did at Misano. It has not. Karsten in 9th place has a massive lead over Svenchek in 2nd place. In fact, it's the difference between 9th and 16th overall. But we're looking at the wing camera of Sean Arnold. Sean Arnold looking back at Matthias Egger. This is the battle for the lead of the race. We talked about that maybe in about 8 laps they'd be caught up. It's only been about 4, and Egger has closed the gap up to just about that much. I wonder where he is gaining all of his time. Let's ride along a little bit and listen to the sights and the sounds here for the battle for the lead.
You know, Jesse Lee, I had the luxury of being able to go watch a real-world motorsport race just a couple of weeks ago. And
Did you?
I did. I got to watch the British GT 3 Hours of Donington.
Oh.
And I have to be honest, you know, I've always said that the Lamborghini sounds amazing, the Nissan sounds amazing, the Bentley sounds amazing, and they all do sound amazing. I personally, though, think that the Mercedes GT3 is the most unique sounding car when you hear it on trackside.
Even more unique than the Porsche.
Yes.
I mean, the Porsche in real life literally sounds like, I would say, like more of a super bikey type sound.
It sounds like a strangulated cat, yes.
I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to describe it like that, JC Lee. I mean, I'm still a big Porsche fan. You know, I've always said this. If Porsche wants to reach out and sponsor me, I'm your boy. I'm there. I will drive your cars that JC Lee describes as strangled cats. So never sponsor JC Lee, but certainly myself. But I kind of do agree with Ryan. The Mercedes does have such a nice engine note coming down, and Egger here, I mean, he's come off the back of a massive victory in the Lamborghini series, so I mean, he's pumped up. He's got the ability, like I said, and Arnold, the man in that number 38, that of course has to be ultra defensive at this stage and not let up that lead. And that 38 car, we saw it, Ryan, it had such a troubled pit stop, and now finds itself right up towards the front of the order again.
Yeah, and the Orion Race Team car with Matthias Egger behind the wheel, definitely looking to take the lead of the race back from the Fordzilla Ferrari. Remember, there is still another round of pit stops to go in this race, the final pit window for that, where they'll be able to come in and successfully complete the race without invalidating their stint timers. Will be opening in just a few minutes' time. And Matthias Egger, they're going to be hoping that they don't have the exact same problem they had at the end of the first stint, where they lost the lead of the race by about 8 seconds after a fairly poor first pit stop. So if they retake the lead, they're going to have to hope that they can keep it after they do that final pit stop, because I get the feeling that if they have another slow stop, they're not going to regain the lead of this race from that 38 car.
Yeah, guys, I was just thinking, and I was trying to retrace some of the pit stops from the Fordzilla team, if this might be important for them, for Sam Arnold right now, that might be important for the 38 team to stay in front of the 126, because they have beaten them all day off pit road. But if it's going to come down to this at the end, I don't think that the 126 is going to just let them have the win. I'm pretty sure they'd prefer to go 2 for 2 to start the season. I mean, what's better than winning one race? It's winning 2, right? So I think their big challenge here is to be as defensive as possible for the next 10 minutes or so, get into pit road, make that stop, make it as good as the last ones, and get back out there, because otherwise I don't see how the Ferrari wins this battle. But if Arnold can drive defensively but also safely here and continue what he's done for the last few laps on Egger, I think he might have a shot, boys.
I almost get the feeling that Egger's kind of doing that read on the driver ahead of him. He's just settling himself into finding where he knows he's going to be faster and where potentially he has to be to make a move ahead. And that's really where it comes down to in this form of racing. You have to, you eventually do find a driver that's of your pace level, and then your on-track battle begins. And it's then all about trying to just see where you can make up a position. And like the circuit at Zandvoort is just so tight and narrow. The camber of the circuit kind of throws your car in a predetermined direction. Any sort of variance off of that line or trajectory is sending you into a slower path, into a dirty part of the track, as Ismail Lebrec tries to continue on his assault on that number 66 of Tinko van der Velde. And Lebrec, again, having had a difficult race start, didn't really compromise him too much, but you can't really know where drivers would finish up if they didn't have those kind of incidents. So the two of them fighting out on track and very much in a potential position to fight it out. Looks like Van der Velde are going to peel into the pits, box, and he's going to call that nice and early before he gets too much pressure from behind.
I like that call. George. He knew that Lebrec was coming. Lebrec, who's not really had to race any car for position in quite some time, finally found for half a lap somebody to race against, and they pull off into pit road. But I think that was brilliant by Van der Velde there. That's on their strategy anyway. And if you were getting caught like that, why not come on and get into pit road and don't let them past you and sort of give up the position. So smart move by him. I think the first of many that will come in. I think a lot of these guys are going to wait to a little bit later perhaps, but they will all have to come in one more time, as denoted by the amber number 1 beside their number. You'll notice that Van der Velde's amber number 1 is now green, meaning he is good to go to the finish. That team has satisfied the pit requirements for this race and do not need to come in and won't go back in unless something incredibly unfortunate happens. But look at this. They were down, these two, the top two, were down to about 0.3 to a quarter of a second, and now the gap went back out for a lap or so now. Is that more of what George Smith is saying? Is Egger just sort of sizing up Arnold here, or maybe they found a little pace in that number 38? I don't know, but definitely agree with you, George. I think Egger is smart enough to know and not to overdrive his car. I mean, they're staring at another win right now, potentially.
Yeah, they just are, in my mind, doing exactly that. Just following along, waiting to see what happens up in front of them. And at this point, it's kind of like, are they going to make their switch ups, at the same sort of time, or is someone going to try something a little bit different when it comes into their final pit stops? Egger at this point, I feel like has showed us pace-wise the ability to get back onto the back of the number 38. At this stage of the race, I can't really tell you whether the slight gap between them is just due to the fact of that they've kind of encountered a bit of lap traffic, and it's not really always going to be the same situation lap after lap. So again, you can size up your prey as much as you want, but if you time it incorrectly and get caught out behind a slower car, like a lapped car there that we saw, just look at the space that Arnold now frees up there. So again, now we'll watch. Does Egger close in that gap? Does he get right behind him? And if so, then perhaps that reading sort of strat is there, and he's just looking for a way to get past in the final closing sectors.
Well, more penalties here, and Nico's walked through the door again, so he's about to hand me another one. Lap 42 incident involving the 9 and the 269. That would be a 15-second penalty for the 269. That was converted into a drive-through for accruing a third 15-second penalty, which was then converted into a stop-and-go 10 for a second drive-through infraction in the race. So a double conversion there, one of the first times I've ever seen anything like that happen. Stop and go 10 inevitably for the 269, causing that incident with the 9. And the 269 again involved with the 899. That would be a 15-second penalty for the 899, deemed at fault for that. That was converted into a drive-through because he hit the penalty threshold for that to be converted into a drive-through. Sloppy out there by some of the guys, it must be said.
Yeah, a few of these guys picking up some pretty severe penalties now. I mean, stop and go 10. I don't think we've seen one of those yet on a live broadcast, or at least not that I can remember.
I don't think I have either.
I also... I think it is, Jesse, like you said, a little bit of a sloppy drive, some mistakes being made. It's a circuit that is potentially one of the challenging ones. But again, if you watch the intro to the stream too, we had a nice discussion about the full calendar coming out, and the entire calendar goes to push drivers to seeing who really is the very best end of the season. Nothing given for free, nothing easy is going their way, and it is going to be a battle out of the grades. So into the last 28 minutes of the race.
Oh no! Major incident!
Egger, mistake coming down, runs out wide, and now that is the change, and that's the little switch up that we needed to see, because Egger was putting the pressure onto Arnold, and a momentary lapse in concentration can just go and almost ruin your race. Does keep it out of the barrier, so in this replay we'll go and see. Does actually pick up the apex, but just doesn't have the turn anymore. Runs out of road, very understeery coming down, and then has to just coast it back onto circuit. A little bit of dirt on the tires too, so going to compromise his time for the rest of the lap. Not what the Orion race team wanted to have happen to them. The number 38 is going to feel confident, and they will go straight into the pits. So I think that's a good call. You've lost the time on the lap already. No need to stay out longer in a dirty situation. So into the pits goes our second place, number 126, Egger. To keep your eyes out on when the 38 potentially comes in. Jaroslav Hanzik in the number 39 in third place, also making some moves over to the 777 of Sebastian Brunier.
Yeah, indeed. We're going to have a little interview. We didn't expect to do this, but we have Mr. Whitford with us here, and we're going to talk about how this race has went for them. And in addition to that, hello, Mr. Whitford. Well, I thought he was there. I just talked to him a moment ago. We'll let him sort that out. But, yeah, it is a race that maybe hasn't gone their way. I have a sneaking suspicion why, though they probably don't want to hear it. But, yeah, I wonder, gentlemen, that move with Egger going off into the dirt, I have to wonder if that could be the one mistake that they've made all race, but the one mistake that loses them this race. But that all being said, you take second, right?
I'd take second any day of the week, Jesse. Any top 3 position for me for points is there. So it's not a big write-off for them, but I think it's still with the potential to potentially get a win here. I think Ryan is going to still be pushing towards the very final waving of that checkered flag. 25 minutes for full Wit in that number 25 for Muka Motorsports to see if they can get themselves up. They've also had a little bit of damage early on. I'm not quite sure if they elected to fix it up, but they find themselves right in the mid-pack for the moment as they chase down the likes of Nicholas Bosselet in that 137 Porsche. And just ahead of them, well, not really just ahead of them, they've then got Rupert. Still got one mandatory stop to serve. So a couple of cars out here, out of position. So when they jump into the pit box, that's when we see them change up. But for the moment, we just call the cars that are out on circuit in the positions that they are. And as they start to update, we'll start to see how the full picture will form. Jesse, you're back, I believe, and
Yes.
ready for an interview.
Yes. Do we have you now, Mark?
We do.
Excellent, excellent.
Good evening.
Good evening. So, Mark, you drive with Sebastian Bernier, one of our favorite people around here. He helps us here at RCI as well. But I think I know why you're struggling.
It's because he didn't make the setup.
No, it's because it's a McLaren mate. It's not an Audi. Why are you in a McLaren?
Well, I'm a massive McLaren fanboy, so that kind of swayed our choice.
So you made Sebastian Bernier drive a McLaren. Did you get much resistance from him?
I actually got no resistance from him at all. We were both driving the McLaren in a separate season for the OBRC, so we were going to toy with the Lexus for this championship, but we thought there's no point in chopping and changing cars too many times, so we'll go for the McLaren and see how that goes for us.
Well, we see Mawson and Schumacher going at it for the 8th place position here. So what hasn't gone right for you guys today so far?
We actually had a good start. I think it was a P20 we started, I think, and after lap 1 we were up to 15 or something like that. And we had good pace, but for some reason we picked up a bit of damage, and I just lost all pace. There was so much understeer in the car, and basically after the pit stop it just hasn't really found its speed again. About 2 seconds a lap slower than we should be.
So where do you think, had there not been damage, where do you think you would have been running today? I mean, certainly, do you think you had a top 10, top 15 car? Where do you think you were?
I do think we probably could have been with the top 10 with all the penalties. We were right on Marco Ripper's bumper for the first sort of 5 laps or so, and then the damage, I don't know where it came from, but the car just it turned in an absolute dog afterwards. It was so hard to drive.
So you guys are, you're going to be entering the final, 6 rounds, I suspect. You're actually in it to the end of this championship.
We are. We'll be here every week.
So what would be a good result for you guys? You're in pro. You guys have both shown incredible pro caliber. So what would be a reasonable expectation for you guys at the end of the season? What do you want out of it as far as final result?
I think going into it, we were kind of expecting a really competitive field. So I would say anything in the top 15 we'd be pleased with. Anything in the top 10 would be golden.
Top 10 in the championship. The Open Visor Racing boys, always glad to see you guys coming over here and racing. It's actually sort of a pleasure. I'm sure same for you guys too, because as Open Visor guys, you guys get to race against other teams as well. Whenever you see a team you really recognize, does that motivate you more to want to battle them, to fight them, or beat them in a championship?
Absolutely. I know the pace of some of the guys in front of us, like the likes of Zero and Ripper and Schumacher and stuff like that. So I know we can fight them guys, but we're just not having a good time at the moment. It's just no luck at the moment. So it's just hard to keep going. But we'll get our heads down and we'll come back next round.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Whitford from the Open Visor Racing Group in the 777 McLaren not had the race that they would have liked today, but they will be a fighter, and you could probably catch them inside the top 10 a week from today. Mark, thanks for coming out and talking to us.
Thanks for having me. Have a good night, guys.
You too. Excellent stuff. Excellent commentary, because I was curious what had happened to that team and why they were where they were, because it was uncharacteristic. But to see that they picked up mysterious damage, Ryan, as it turns out.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you can kind of catch damage in odd places around a lot of these circuits. I mean, wasn't it iRacing, which is still kind of notorious?
Don't say that word.
It's still kind of notorious, isn't it, for its Le Mans races where people can pick up significant floor damage on their cars over the course of the race just by touching curbs. And, you know, it's not something that's out of the question in ACC either. I mean, you know, if you maybe clip a curb too hard, you know, you get a bit of, you know, off track and stuff like that, you know, it's definitely within the realm of possibility you can pick up this damage that you can't see physically on the car, as Cody Blanton almost collides with the 666 and James Parker will just about make his way past.
Good Lord.
And
wow, that was that was a bit of a hair-raising moment. I mean, also just touching on things in the race here, have you noticed our 126 car now piloted again by Barazini once again after serving their final pit stop? Again, just out of position down in 4th place. Little replay there, we get to see the little nudge coming through. Parker then threads the needle through T3, which is definitely not always a place that you can make a clean maneuver. So good on the 666, also giving Parker some space coming through. Cody Blanton maybe picking up a little bit of side damage to his Ferrari, but I mean, Darren King leads away. He's got a 10.9 second lead as of the last splits to Valentino Barry in the number 39 Lamborghini, and then Joe McCauley in that 66 and Barazini in that 126 for 3rd and 4th. So Barazini and the 126, they haven't quite had the best race in terms of where those pits have come in, and kind of plays into what you've been talking about, Ryan, just how important pit stops are in this kind of a series.
Yeah, it's going to be, you know, the big decider on a lot of these smaller circuits, or not really smaller circuits, but kind of tighter circuits, you know, where overtaking isn't really easy to do. And, you know, that's one of the things that these guys are going to learn with some of the tracks that we have coming up in this championship. I mean, Zolder and Brands Hatch are on the calendar, and Brands Hatch is going to be an interesting race. It's towards the end of the season. I think it's the 3rd to last race of the season, so I think round 6. And I'm interested to see how 38-ish cars, you know, nearing on 40, do a 2-hour race around Brands Hatch with driver swaps. I mean, pit stops are going to be vital in that race to make overtakes, as we can see.
Oh, thank goodness.
I think that's
I'm
the
glad
269.
he took the inside there. I'm glad that he didn't try to rejoin. That would have been dangerous.
But yeah, I mean, you know, when we get to the end of the season, towards the end of the season, when the championship battle is well and truly in effect, and we know who the protagonists are, you know, for the championship, that's going to be when everything gets really, really interesting, and the big conversation will come out, you know, around about at Brands Hatch is, what is going to happen with pit stops? You know, are people going to make or break a championship at a track like Brands Hatch, Paul Ricard, Zolder? Entirely possible.
They've got plenty of rounds to get beneath them in this series for them to iron out any of the flaws, I suppose. So in the first couple of rounds, of course, you are looking to get as many points as you can to contribute to your championship standings, but it's not all, you know, lost out. You still have, you know, races to make up. There's going to be times where other drivers are not going to have the luck of the draw for themselves, or, you know, going to be plagued with some issues. As you know, Darren King's just going to slot himself through some of the lap traffic. That Porsche going for the very wide line, and unfortunately going to catch himself into the gravel trap. But yeah, it's the nature of one of these series. You get a little action replay. It keeps it off the wall, which is always important, the 299. And it's...
That thing is crunched.
Yeah, that Porsche has been in the walls a bit, hasn't it? And some front end damage, rear end damage on that car.
Not a happy Porsche at all. Andy Howard struggling just a little bit there. Barazini looking to try and get a position off the Sidemax team. That number 66 has kind of been the battle out between these two, the 126 and the 66 Mercedes. Have really given us some good racing here today. And the 126, some of the passes that I would almost highlight for nomination of passes of the season down the inside of that chicane early on, next to the number 39 Lamborghini. But Fulvio Barazini here still to chase, and plenty of lap traffic for them to work with, Jesse. That might play into the hands of the chase car. Macaulay going to be trying to get his way through the traffic as quick as possible, but it is also going to bunch him back up, and the attack potential from the 126 is going to be there.
Yeah, you're right. And I have not talked about one of my favorite teams all day, the 66 Mercedes team of Macaulay. They're silent killers. They just hang around and get results. They're under threat here from losing third overall right now. But again, catching somebody around here is one thing, passing them is quite another, as Barazini has closed right up to the back of him. But getting a run on another Mercedes, their strengths are your strengths, their weaknesses are your weaknesses, so there's no manufacturer difference. So this is going to be incredibly difficult for him to do. They very desperately love to get around Macaulay and potentially
Barazini is just expressing his love for the late breaks as well. Every time, Jesse, he's just getting later and later, putting that pressure on to the 66. They've got 14 minutes or just under of racing remaining here. So this is the fight out to the line that always gets so exciting in the closing stages of an endurance battle. And Macaulay here is going to have a very difficult time. Barazini has just been eyeing him up. He has those little looks down the inside where he has the opportunity, just a little dive to show, I'm here in your mirrors. And it all goes into that mental game that you play as drivers out on the circuit. You're trying to force the mistakes out. And the longer that Macaulay's checking out his mirrors, seeing that bright blue 126 in the mirrors, he's making mistakes and missing his own racing points. So Macaulay, head down, and Barazini very much in the chase.
Barazini all over the back of his fellow AMG. And this is going to be interesting for the championship, isn't it, Jesse? Because, of course, Barazini and Matthias Egger for the Orion race team, they kind of ran away with it at Misano. And due to some slow pit stops or traffic, they've kind of lost that advantage. And, well, I think the best thing they can take away from this race is going to be a third place as it stands. I don't think they'll have the pace to catch Valentin Barrier in second place, even if they can get past Joe Macaulay. So, was the Triple Eight.
And suddenly another one.
Yeah, the Mercedes pack thickens, the back marker of that Triple Eight that we've seen in the wars a little bit today, this time not featuring out in the battle on track. And I think, Ryan, that's a pretty good observation. This is really what Macaulay needs to just focus on now, is the fact that there's no possible way of catching up to Barry unless he makes a massive mistake. So it's all about just holding on to that third place, getting onto the podium over the likes of the Orion race team is exactly what Sidemax Motorsports will want to happen. And I love just how exciting the closing phases get. You can almost feel the pressure building and running through the veins of the drivers as you've put yourself in a similar situation before, I'm sure, even as a motorsport enthusiast, just watching it out and knowing that one small slip up here at a circuit that is so unforgiving could ruin all of the 2 hours that you've prepared yourselves for, and all the practice time that goes in before getting into the actual 2-hour race. All the prep, all the setup work, everything getting dialed in to share a car. And right now, it is all to fight for. It looks like, is that Barrier that's
He
made the
has
mistake?
made a
It looks like
mistake.
he has. We talked about the mistake, and he's made that mistake. So this could now be a 3-way battle for what could be second and third on the podium.
dear.
Barazini can see it, and he is smacking his lips, Jesse Lee.
Yeah, as soon as we start talking about it's a battle for third, and we were all in agreement it was a battle for third, we forgot the one sentiment we all agree on, is that it is not over until it's over. And just as you were saying, George, that anything is possible here in the late going. Anything that can happen will happen. Barrier has made a massive mistake. He was 13 seconds behind King. Now he's 17 seconds, just to give you a frame of reference of how much time that lost him. And of course, he was about 4.5 to 5 seconds in front of Macaulay, but that gap completely erased now. This fight between Macaulay and Barazini that was for third place is now a fight for second place, and Barrier is now the driver that is going to have to be ultimately defensive. And if I was Macaulay here, oh boy, I don't know what I would do. You got to be aggressive and try to get second place if possible, but you also have to not leave yourself vulnerable to Barazini, because he will desperately want that third place and take that as a consolation prize from today. Could have been a brighter day for the 1-2-6. Pit stops not going their way. George said earlier, all these drivers under pressure, under fire. The only person on the track right now that is calm, cool, and collected is the driver of the 38 Ferrari, Darren King. He is all by himself, 17.5 seconds in front, with only lap traffic to play for. But these gentlemen, all three of these guys, oh, they're going to have a big fight here, and a lap car goes spinning out of the middle. Macaulay makes contact down into the chicane. Barrier is way off into the distance now. Huge contact, miscommunication between the 23 and the 66. Big mess up there, and Barazini cannot capitalize. The only one to capitalize is that 39 Lamborghini, who has sped off into the distance. Look.
I mean, the backmark car there, just in a place that so difficult to kind of not make the mistakes, doesn't really hold the severe inside line for where he needs to be for that chicane, and unfortunately, a little tap comes down. But Macaulay seems almost fueled by that as Barrier makes a big mistake, big oversteer moments as well, and all of those seconds we potentially will see Macaulay eating back into this. Barazini, he's dropped off just a little bit. He also had to avoid that incident in front of him. So Macaulay here, he's got the vision. He knows that the likes of Barrier struggling a little bit in that Lamborghini, because he catches him even after having incidents. And Barrier going to be on the real defensive. If the back end comes out, it could be all over there. So Barrier going to be defensive. Macaulay potentially going to be able to spot a potential gap through there if Barrier has to do this for the next 7.5 minutes. So, this is Macaulay's race right now. He's kind of in a good position. He doesn't quite have the pressure of Barazini from behind. So this is where he needs to just keep onto the back of Barrier, make sure that he can stick to him. And then when Barazini does eventually get into putting some pressure on, then yes, you deal with that. You go defensive where you need to. But whilst he's got this open air, this is exactly what Macaulay needs to do, and he's doing it. The number 66 is chasing it down Barrier, and the number 39, Lamborghini, potentially at risk here.
Well, 7 minutes of this race to go. An hour and 53 down. And the podium places all coming down to just about 2 seconds between second and fourth. One thing that we do know for a fact is that there are 3 cars competing for 2 podium positions, and one of these guys is going to have to miss out.
Yeah, they're gonna get back together here, guys. They're gonna get back together, and this is going to get heated, and I wouldn't be too surprised if there were some steam drivers in their helmets after this one. These guys all really professional. but they're all race car drivers too, so they're going to want this position, and they are going to fight tooth and nail for it as we continue to see that gap coming back in, which you could expect. But with so little time, does somebody make a desperate move on the last lap? I think they might.
At a stage now where, again, Macaulay's lap times compared to the likes of Barriers are, almost 7/10 quicker compared to the last lap. And when it comes down to the fastest laps overall, Barrier still leads out on Macaulay. So I think, that consistency coming in, having the tire life towards the end of the stints, being able to push to the very end is going to be the critical deciding factor here. Barazini is most certainly catching up to Macaulay faster than Macaulay seems to be gaining up to Barrier. So Macaulay's defensive duties not yet done for the evening out here in the Netherlands. 5 minutes on the clock for King to lead out. 69 laps on the board. And what a great second round it has been for the Endurance Series. Big shout out to all our viewers, of course, for joining us. If you haven't slapped that like button, please do so. All the support goes a long way. And big, massive thanks to our entire crew, including all our race stewards, for dealing with all the incidents out on circuit. Of course, joined by Ryan Gill and Jesse Lee here in the comms box. And what a great race we've had this evening.
Yeah, if this round and Misano for the first round, they're a bit of an inclination as to what is to come for the rest of the championship. It's going to be pretty exciting as we'll head to the Nürburgring for the third round of the season. Classic track that a lot of people love, and you can bet there's going to be some exciting racing there, because obviously much more overtaking opportunities around the Nürburgring than you have at Zandvoort and Misano. But we still remain here for the last 4 minutes of this race. It is Darren King that leads, Valentin Barrier second, Joe Macaulay third, Fulvio Barazini fourth, and James Parker in the Project Alien Aston Martin has worked his way up to fifth. 4 minutes of the race to go. 3 guys competing for the last 2 spots on the podium. One of these guys will not make it. Will it be Valentin Barrier? Will it be Joe Macaulay? Will it be Fulvio Barazini? We'll have to wait and find out. And looking at the way Joe Macaulay, he's just having to position that car not entirely where he wants to place it, but where he needs to place it to make sure that Barazini is not going to have a look on his inside.
Barazini is absolutely driving his heart out right now. He is in danger of running off the track, running out of room, all up on the curbs, every chance he can get, maximizing the space, minimizing the time in the corner. He's doing everything he can do. Look how aggressively that blue Mercedes, third in your picture, is driving into corners, trying to be as aggressive as possible. Look at that, the way that he cuts off the corner, using a different line, augmented in comparison to the driver in front of him. This camera, this is Macaulay's AMG wing, looking back at Barazini now. You're going to see just how aggressive Barazini's getting into these corners. He's trying to maximize everything, up off the curb, over to the other curb, cutting the car as hard as he possibly can, up on the curb. Macaulay didn't even really hit that curb, but Barazini did. Look how much, this is exactly what I'm talking about, look how much more aggressive Barazini is getting, trying desperately to get as close as possible. Just a little sniff, just a little lunge as we come down to the end of this race. Guys, this is very much not over between these two. Macaulay hasn't lost any particular ground to Barrier either, but I think the battle is on for third, to be honest with you. I think it's between these two. Actually, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. Barrier has made another mistake, another small mistake. He had about a second gap, and now look at it. 1, 2, 3, all in a line for second, third, and fourth place. And like Mr. Ryan Gill said, one of these drivers is going to lose out on a podium spot here today.
Mike Jones in the chat informing us that Joe Macaulay might be strict on fuel. We did see him on the onboard pictures playing around a lot with the fuel mapping in that AMG, and it does drink this car. It does like its fuel, so that would not be too surprising at all if Joe Macaulay is fairly strict on fuel. If he's having to fuel save, that might be what is allowing Fulvio Barrazzini to put so much pressure on him, but if Valentin Barrier keeps making mistakes, he's going to open him up to, open himself up to Joe McCauley, even if McCauley's having to fuel save. And of course, Barrazzini, in all of this, as we see Joe McCauley get so close to the back of that Lamborghini, Barrazzini is just really hanging on here, just hoping for a chance as Darren King starts the final lap of this race. These guys are coming onto their final lap, lap 72. And it all comes down to this. 1 lap to go, lads.
Might Barrazzini have the position here? He had a bit of a run there, lost it on the exit of the final turn as all of these guys start their final lap as well. Barrier right in front. Can McCauley get a lunge down the inside? Can Barrazzini make the pass by himself? Will Barrier have another little misjudgment again? And will that play into this final lap? We will soon find out. All 3 of these guys hungry for second and third. Nobody wants to finish fourth as they all get up on the curb, and a little bit too much as they wiggle coming down through the Snake S section of the track.
So the tight and windies are there for them now, and it's just a last race battle that they need to endure. Valentin Barrier has done a good job at holding on to second in a Lambo that doesn't feel like it has the ability to push too much. So if McCauley keeps the pressure on, then that's exactly what he needs to do. But it is the final lap, and if he needs to have a look, he needs to have a look now as they get round into the very last overtaking opportunities, and they're not alongside, they're not there. Does McCauley have a little look? He can't. He tries to fake a little braking maneuver coming in, hoping that Barrier will make a mistake coming down. Barrazzini is going to capitalize off of that. King crosses the line in first place with a dominating finish coming out for himself. But the battle down for second and third continues. Valentin Barrier, that number 39 Lamborghini, will defend and hold off the likes of McCauley as they weave down the line. Valentin Barrier takes second, Joe McCauley third, and Fulvio Barrazzini takes home fourth place. And, Jesse getting very excited at the post-race crashes.
Well, you can tell the drivers that are happy versus the drivers that are angry, because the happy ones are the ones that are crashing here. Interesting point. You saw that Barrier and McCauley were weaving about, having a bit of fun there, but not amused was Barrazzini there. He was not very happy. But of course, that will happen when you're the odd driver out. And of course, sometimes we see post-race crashes like that. That is typically in good humor. We don't condone that sort of thing, but again, whenever they're doing it as a joke, it's a bit different. But results confirmed. Darren King, who started this not on the front row, mind you, will walk away with the win today. A fantastic result for the number 38 Ford Zilla Ferrari team. Barrier will hold on to second place in his Lamborghini. McCauley will be credited with third, holding off Barrazzini, who was fourth. James Parker ran a good race, but a quiet race in fifth place. The same with the number 42 of Schumacher. Cody Blanton, seventh. Mawson, eighth. Bosselet in ninth place. Phil Vitt managed 10th. Then, of course, the first AM car, the 222 of Stricker, who ran a fantastic race and was not challenged by his own class. Macha left Lima. Geider, Slizik is the second AM car. Woolmuth, Muthen, Conway, Brunier in 20th. That is your top 20 from the race. Guys, thoughts, takeaways from this round? My personal feelings, absolute chaos. None of us picked Darren King to win this race, and he showed us why we're so wrong.
Yeah, Darren King definitely pulling out all the stops after the really, really dire race that they had in the first round of the season at Bassano. They can finally get their championship battle underway. And of course, we'll be looking forward to next week's race at the Nürburgring. Obviously, championship standings to be calculated, but I'm fairly sure that the Orion race team will still be leading come next week. So, if you have enjoyed the race here tonight, like George Smith and Jesse Lee have alluded to earlier, do feel free to like and subscribe. It really does help us out a lot. And if you've enjoyed the race that you've seen here today, you might be thinking, well, what else have you got on offer? Well, let me tell you, we have some phenomenal stuff coming up over the next couple of weeks. And it all starts on Sunday. Now, Sunday isn't a day that we typically do races, and we're not actually having a race on Sunday, because on Sunday it's going to be the qualifying and super pole of the Bathurst 12-hour that we have coming up on the 17th of October. So, of course, qualifying happening for both the Split 1 and Split 2 servers. Of course, we'll have pre-qualifying going on for those on the Saturday. That will not be live streamed, though. And, of course, the top 10 from each respective server for their class going through and competing in the Super Bowl. So that's going to be incredibly exciting to watch. And of course, I think it'll be Mike Jones joining myself in the commentary box for that one. And it's going to be incredibly exciting as we build up to the biggest endurance race we have hosted yet here at RCI. On Monday, we have the continuation of the McLaren Masters Cup. We'll be at Suzuka for a night race. McLaren 720S and 570S cars all taking to a dark Suzuka under the lights. And it's going to be incredibly interesting to see how all of that pans out. Joe McCauley, in fact, one of the racers here tonight, leading the championship for that particular series. Then everything for the Wednesday Championship was initially wrapped up last week, and we have another Wednesday Championship starting next week as well, the SGP GT3 Championship, and that is going to be live streamed by Jake Boswell. We don't have a commentary team secured for that series yet, but we should have some more information about that coming out soon and later on in the week. And then, of course, next Friday we will return for the third round of the Endurance Championship at the Nürburgring, and I will have Jesse Lee and George Smith alongside me for that one. And it's been an absolute pleasure to have both of you alongside me here today. And, of course, a big thanks to our stewards once again for the incredible work that they have done here at RCI. I mean, to go, you know, show up and do 2 hours of stewarding, they don't really get the credit they deserve for it as well. They do a phenomenal job. So definitely show them some love, because they do deserve it. So that is it for RCI. Big thank you to Race Department AK Informatica and Raceface Speed Labs, our partners here at Racing Club International. And we will be back on Sunday for qualifying and Super Pole of the Bathurst 12-hour. But besides that, we hope you've enjoyed the stream tonight. Have a lovely rest of your evening and enjoy your weekend.
When you feel it's hopeless, when you think that you lost, oh, I will take your hand and we'll rise up from the dust. Oh, here we go, 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 let us heal and grow. You won't be alone, we're unstoppable. Don't be afraid to show what we're going for. This is what we know. Here we come back to life, we're still breathing, standing up every